Chapter 20, Lu Family Sisters _1 After moving to his new home, Lu Changxing took some items out of his storage bag and then went to his new practice room to begin meditating and cultivating. He was curious to see how much more effective cultivating on the second-grade spirit vein in Jianghu Valley was, compared to the first-grade spirit vein in Jianghu Villa. Several hours later, Lu Changxing opened his eyes, filled with joy. Not unworthy of a second-grade spirit vein, the spiritual energy is several times denser than that of Jianghu Villa, which has increased my cultivation speed by 30%, he exclaimed. At this moment, Lu Changxing clearly felt the benefits that came with the second-grade spirit vein. Moreover, the mere 30% was because his speed of assimilating spiritual energy was limited. Otherwise, Lu Changxing felt that his cultivation speed could increase even more. Nevertheless, he was already quite satisfied with this improvement. Subsequently, Lu Changxing became filled with passion for cultivation in the time that followed. 4 days later, a manager named Lu Bo came to where Lu Changxing lived. He delivered a golden talisman brush and 100 sets of talisman-making materials. Lu Changxing was tasked to produce 20 fireball talismans within a month. This was one of the stipulations in the contract Lu Changxing had with the Lu family. The Lu family provided materials, and Lu Changxing made talismans. For Lu Changxing, producing 20 fireball talismans a month was naturally not a problem at all, it was purely a profit. However, this was also the Lu family still considering Lu Changxing to be at a training stage. In the future, the quantity and quality of talisman production were both expected to increase. In the blink of an eye, it had been over a month since Lu Changxing moved to Jianghu Valley. On this day, his 8th child was born. It was a daughter. When the child was born, Lu Changxing didn't feel any fluctuations from the spiritual root. He immediately knew that this child didn't possess a spiritual root. Since the confirmation system could detect the child's spirit vein and this child didn't have one, he couldn't help feeling a bit of disappointment in his heart. But it was only a slight disappointment. He had become much more open-minded regarding the matter of his children's spiritual roots and could accept it with equanimity. Looking at his newly born child, Lu Changxing suddenly remembered that today was the last day of the month and tomorrow would be the start of a new one. And on every first day of the month in Jianghu Valley, there was a small-scale trading event. I have never seen such a trading event among cultivators before. It might be worth checking out tomorrow, Lu Changxing thought to himself. As he had become a talisman master previously, Lu family disciples and immortal seedlings had given him a round of gifts, so he had some spare cash. Thus, he wanted to see what this small-scale trading event within the Lu family was all about. The next morning, Lu Changxing went to the place where Jianghu Valley's trading event was held. The trading venue was called Bamboo Heart Lake, and by the lake stood pavilions and waterside pavilions. In these pavilions, various Lu family members displayed items for trade on stone tables. Or they hung up signs indicating they wished to purchase certain goods or resources. He didn't know if he had come too early or if there were always so few people, but there were only about 10 people with stalls. The items for sale were few and scattered, and there wasn't anything he could use. Lu Changxing walked around once and found it uninteresting, ready to head straight back. Just as Lu Changxing was about to leave the waterside pavilion, he saw 2 women walking towards him, arm in arm. He recognized one of the women. She was the young Miss Lu Miaoga. Miss Lu Miaoga was dressed very simply, her 3,000 strands of verdant hair bound behind her with a moon-white silk band, elegant and graceful. She wore a moon-white, plain long dress without any other adornments, simple and refined, with a celestial and ethereal allure. The other person, Lu Changxing had not seen before. But upon seeing this woman, he couldn't help but take a few more glances. This woman appeared to be 18 or 19 years old, extremely beautiful, and bore a 7 to 8 points of resemblance to Lu Miaoga. However, her makeup, dress, and temperament were starkly different from Lu Miaoga's. Her makeup was elaborately done, her black, lustrous hair was fastened behind her head with a dark gold hair ornament, with a few locks falling on either side of her chest, while she wore dazzling rhinestone earrings on her tender earlobes. She was draped in a sexy, form-fitting dark dress embroidered with gold threads, revealing her shoulders and perfectly showcasing her curvaceous figure, leaving little to the imagination. The slits in the sides of her dress, akin to a cheongsam, were cut very high, allowing one to glimpse the woman's partly voluptuous thighs and her jade-like smooth calves. However, at this moment, a pair of slender and beautiful legs were not the pure and smooth white that could shame the frost and snow. They were covered in a layer of black silk stockings as thin as cicada wings, making the legs look even more graceful and enticing. What surprised Lu Changxing enough to take a second look were not just the black, see-through silk stockings, but also the shoes the woman was wearing, a pair of exquisite high heels with fine black and gold patterns. The sharp heels, estimated to be 3 to 4 inches tall, enhanced the contour of the woman's legs and made them appear even more perfect and provocative. They were simply leg-loving material. The whole person looked coolly elegant and nobility personified, sexy and alluring, standing a good half-head taller than Miss Lu Miaoge, who was beside her. "What are you looking at? If you leer any more, I'll gouge out your eyes." The black dress, high-heeled woman saw Lu Changsheng's gaze on her and her voice was as cold as icy springs. "Huan Huan." Seeing this, Lu Miaoge gently tugged at her sister. She then showed an apologetic expression to Lu Changxing. Lu Changxing also felt that he had been somewhat rude. Mainly because he hadn't expected to see an attire of black stockings and high heels in this world of cultivation. Moreover, the woman's outfit, a dark gold dress with black stockings and high heels, did indeed catch the eye. The noble coldness combined with a touch of sexy temptation made him involuntarily take a second glance. "I have seen the Mississippi. I have seen this, miss, it was my rudeness." Lu Changxing bowed courteously. If it were the past him, he might have been embarrassed. But now, as a man with 3 wives and 6 concubines, father to several children, such a small matter did not embarrass him. Desire is natural. Seeing black stockings for the first time and taking a second look is just human nature, isn't it? However, through Lu Miaoge's words and the 2 women's appearance, he realized that the pair were sisters, which somewhat surprised him. He didn't expect such a big difference in temperament and character between the 2 sisters. "Lu Changxing, are you here to buy something?" Lu Miaoge's soft voice inquired. "I heard Uncle Fu say that there is a small trade fair here on the 1st of every month, so I thought I'd come over to have a look." Lu Changxing so replied. "The trade fair won't be full until midday, you've arrived a bit early," said Lu Miaoge softly. "I see, but I'm not really here to buy anything, I just came to broaden my horizons, and now that I have, I'm ready to go back." Lu Changxing nodded, not lingering for further conversation. Being attracted to beauty is quite normal, but a woman like Lu Miaoge is not someone he can afford to provoke at the moment, so it's better to keep a distance. Especially in such a public setting, who knows if conversing with Lu Miaoge might draw the attention of her admirers or followers. Without delay, Lu Changxing made a bow and took his leave. Watching Lu Changxing walk away, the black dress woman beside Lu Miaoge commented with a hint of disdain on her face, "So that's Lu Changxing? He really is as lecherous as the rumors say, having married and taken 9 concubines, and he's still so lecherous. Huan Huan, you too should pay some attention to how you dress. This is a bit," Lu Miaoge said gently. "You mean it's a bit frivolous, right? Sister, women dress for those they fancy." "I'm dressing up for myself, not for anyone else," Lu Miaohuan retorted with a pout, unconcerned by her sister's words. "It seems I still know too little about this world." "That's also true. I spent the first 18 years of my life in a village, and aside from being taken to the Qingyun sect, the farthest I've ever been was to the county town. Since coming to the Lu family, I haven't stepped foot outside at all. Everything I know comes from reading books, so how could I understand much? This is a world with cultivation, so I shouldn't look at things with a limited perspective. All those immortal and fantasy animations from my past life always featured high heels and long legs, so the existence of stockings and high heels here is actually quite normal." Lu Changxing returned to his quarters, feeling somewhat reflective. He didn't take today's incident to heart. It was just a minor interlude in life. But in the future, he should look into where to buy such shoes and stockings. He had no other intentions, he merely wanted to give his wives and concubines some gifts. Chapter 21, 3-Year Agreement. _1 In the monotonous and dull life of cultivation, talisman making, and spell practicing, another month had passed. Lu Qiangsheng's another concubine was pregnant with a second child. At the same time, the 9th child was also born. Still, there was no pulsation of the spiritual root, indicating the absence of one. On the 2nd day after the birth of the 9th child, Lu Qiangsheng received a letter. He was somewhat surprised when he saw the letter. It was actually from Hong Yi, who had attended the Immortal sex examination with him. The letter started with simple greetings and then inquired whether Lu Qiangsheng still remembered the 3-year agreement they had made. It had been more than 2 years since they had parted from the Qinyan sect. He hoped that Lu Qiangsheng and Li Feiyu would also come together to catch up. And he mentioned that Xiaoxia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin had all agreed to the meeting. The 3-year agreement. Lu Qiangsheng, looking at the content of the letter, narrowed his eyes slightly. This 3-year agreement was a casual remark made by Hong Yi when the 6 of them were introduced to the Qinyan sect. They had agreed, regardless of whether they entered the Immortal sects or not, to gather at Rui Prefecture's largest restaurant, Rui Tower, 3 years later. If it weren't for Hong Yi's letter, Lu Qiangsheng would have forgotten about it and considered it just a joke. He did not expect that Hong Yi would actually write to mention it. He also said that Xiaoxia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin would all come. There is about half a year left, should I go? Lu Qiangsheng thought to himself. On his way to Jianghu mountain in the past, the attack by the Chen family cast some shadows on him. He felt the cultivation world was too dangerous and did not want to leave the Lu family lightly. But the thought of the meeting and that Xiaoxia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin would also be there gave him some inclination to attend. As the saying goes, the more friends one has, the more paths one finds. All 3 were disciples of the Qinyan sect, and maintaining this friendship might be beneficial and advantageous for him in the future. He wasn't close to Xiaoxia and Zhao Qingqing, but he had a fairly good relationship with Han Lin back then. On this trip to the meeting, I can also deal with the talismans I've accumulated over the years and buy some materials for drawing high-quality and supreme talismans. With these talisman treasures on me, as long as I don't encounter a foundation-building cultivator, there shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, after seeking the path of cultivation and leaving my home for 3 years, it's time to go back for a visit. After thinking it over, Lu Qiangsheng decided to make the trip. Besides attending the meeting, there were other things he needed to do. He had to make some decisions about his worldly family affairs as well. Since I've received the letter, Feiyu must have received one too, Lu Qiangsheng thought. Immediately, he went out and headed towards Jianghu Villa to see what Li Feiyu planned to do. It would be safer for the 2 of them to travel together. Lu Qiangsheng did not go directly to Li Feiyu's house. Instead, he first went to the 100 Treasures Pavilion to greet the shopkeeper. If it were not for the storekeeper of the 100 Treasures Pavilion, his talent for talisman making wouldn't have become so smoothly known by the higher-ups of the Lu family. Thus, he came to visit and express his gratitude. Besides, he was still dependent on the Lu family, and it was good to cultivate a favorable impression by befriending the people of the Lu family. After all, cultivation is not only about practicing and fighting, there are also interpersonal relationships and worldly affairs to navigate. The shopkeeper of the 100 Treasures Pavilion was delighted and gratified to see Lu Qiangsheng come to Jianghu Villa to visit him. Initially, he had helped Lu Qiangsheng out of self-interest. He saw that the young man had a good talent for talisman making and was a decent person, suitable to be utilized by the Lu family. But Lu Qiangsheng's gesture added a few more points of fondness in his heart. He felt the young man was indeed commendable. Afterward, Lu Qiangsheng bought some medicinal herbs for strengthening the foundation and nurturing vitality from the 100 Treasures Pavilion as gifts and brought them to Li Feiyu's home. He now had 10 spirit stones a month, while Li Feiyu still had only 2 spirit stones. Directly providing for the latter would not be accepted. And he wouldn't do that either. Not to mention he wasn't wealthy enough to afford it, doing so would also change the nature of their friendship. Visiting now with some gifts in hand was just appropriate. Carrying the gifts, Lu Qiangsheng arrived at Li Feiyu's home. If you're going to visit, why bother bringing gifts? Li Feiyu was somewhat surprised and delighted to see Lu Qiangsheng coming. It's not like we're just neighbors dropping by, so it's perfectly normal to come over and bring something. Besides, in 2 months, my sister-in-law will be giving birth, and all these are things to nourish her body. Lu Changxing said casually. He and Li Feiyu were of the same age, but Li Feiyu was older by several months, so Lu Changxing also called Li Feiyu's wife sister-in-law. Alright, then I'll take it without being polite. Upon hearing this, Li Feiyu did not hesitate and directly accepted the gifts. You've received Hong Yi's letter too, haven't you? As they entered the living room, Li Feiyu brewed a pot of tea and, guessing the purpose of Lu Changxing's visit, started the conversation. I did, and after seeing the letter, I thought that since Han Lin and the others are going, I might as well go too, to get together. And I've been away from home for so long, it's time to go back and settle things, so I came over to see what you think. Lu Changxing stated directly. I have the same idea. Li Feiyu nodded and said. Great, then we'll go together. We still have half a year, and we should set out about a month in advance. After all, traveling from Jianghu Mountain to Rui Prefecture takes quite some time, Lu Changxing said. No problem, I usually don't have much going on. Just come and call me on the day you leave, Li Feiyu said. Subsequently, the two chatted for a while, and Lu Changxing had lunch at Li Feiyu's home before leaving. Time flew, and another half a month passed by. On this day, Lu Changxing's 10th child was born. Just like the others, this child did not have a spiritual root. However, the instant the child was born, a system notification sounded. Congratulations to the host, the number of progeny has reached 10. You've earned 1 lottery chance. As expected. Upon hearing the system notification, Lu Changxing was delighted and thought to himself that it was as he expected. He had previously suspected that once certain achievements were triggered, they would lead to rewards. The first numeral was 1, it was highly likely that the second numeral was 10. I wonder if the next one is 20, 50, or 100, Lu Changxing pondered. Without further thought, Lu Changxing went to see the child. It was a girl, adorable indeed. After visiting his wives and children, Lu Changxing returned to his study to start his 4th lottery draw. System, I want to draw a prize. Lu Changxing silently wished. Immediately, a pale red virtual lottery wheel appeared before his eyes. Looking at the familiar lottery wheel, Lu Changxing took a deep breath and prayed in his heart. He hoped for a cultivation technique. His current returning origin technique was a primary level common cultivation technique. The advantage was that the cultivation was steady and smooth, with almost no risk of issues during the process. However, the downside was the same, too steady, which caused the absorption of spiritual energy to be exceedingly slow. He hadn't felt it much while at Jianghu Villa. Now that he had come to Jianghu Valley to cultivate on the 2nd grade spiritual vein, this feeling was very pronounced. Therefore, Lu Changxing thought that if he could obtain a cultivation technique, this situation should improve. After all, even if the system was stingy, it would at least provide a peripheral sect-level technique, right? Start the draw. Lu Changxing exhaled and declared. Instantly, a golden light spun on the pale red wheel. After 5 seconds, the wheel slowed down. Under Lu Changxing's gaze, filled with a mix of nervousness and anticipation, the golden light settled on pet beasts. Chapter 22, 9 Netherhound. _1, ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a 9 Netherhound cub. The reward has been distributed to the system space, and the host can check it at any time. An image of a small creature, dark as the abyss and resembling a wolf or a dog, emerged from the big wheel, accompanied by a system notification sound. A 9 Netherhound cub? Lu Changxing paused, his face lighting up with joy. Although it wasn't the cultivation technique he wanted most, he also considered pet beasts quite nice. After all, those who played games in their previous lives know the importance of having a good pet. It's pretty much the same in this cultivation world. If one has a good spiritual pet to accompany them as they grow, it can provide considerable help in both combat power and other aspects. Although he had never heard the name 9 Netherhound, Lu Changxing was unsure of what rank this demon beast was, but after the previous 3 draws, Lu Changxing had some trust in the system. He knew that while products from the system might sometimes be useless, they were never trash. Lu Changxing directed his mental spirit to look at the 9 Netherhound in the system space, and information immediately surfaced. Spiritual pet, 9 Netherhound, rank, Heaven grade middle grade, description, an ancient fierce beast variant, with Heaven grade middle grade bloodline, possessing a trace of the primordial true spirit 9 Netherhound bloodline, can grow to its peak in 500 years and become a 4th rank demon beast. Hiss. A Heaven grade middle grade bloodline, and it even has a trace of the primordial true spirit's bloodline. As long as it grows to its peak, it can become a 4th rank demon beast. Upon seeing the information about the 9 Netherhound, Lu Changxing gasped in surprise and felt a wave of exhilaration. In the cultivation world, besides the human race, there are many other races, such as winged, feathered, scaly, insect, flora, and fauna that can cultivate and ascend, are all collectively called demons. However, most demons are unenlightened with little intelligence and are also known as demon beasts. The strength division of demon beasts is very straightforward. From low to high, they are classed as 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. Corresponding to the Qi refinement realm, foundation establishment stage, core formation stage, nascent soul stage, and divinity transformation stage of the human cultivators. The difference between demon beasts and humans is that humans possess a spiritual root and strengthen themselves through cultivation techniques, while demon beasts cultivate and grow stronger through the bloodline inheritance within their bodies. The higher the bloodline rank, the greater the potential. As far as Lu Changxing knew, the bloodline ranks for demon beasts were divided into low-rank bloodline, middle-grade bloodline, high-rank bloodline, earth-grade bloodline, heaven-grade bloodline, and the legendary true spirit bloodline. Low-rank bloodlines, also known as mixed bloodlines, will never break through to become 2nd-rank demon beasts in their lifetimes without some sort of fortuitous encounter that purifies or mutates their bloodline. Middle-grade bloodlines will grow into 1st-rank demon beasts, but there's hope to grow into 2nd-rank demon beasts. High-rank bloodline demon beasts will mostly be 2nd rank at their peak, with a chance to become 3rd rank. Earth-grade bloodline demon beasts are 2nd rank in their mature stage, and at their peak, they have a high chance of reaching 3rd rank. As for heaven-grade demon beasts, they are 3rd rank in their mature stage and can hope to reach 4th rank at their peak. This 9 Netherhound obtained by Lu Changxing not only had a heaven-grade middle-grade bloodline but also a trace of the primordial true spirit bloodline. Therefore, given 500 years, it could smoothly grow to its peak and become a 4th rank demon beast. That is equivalent to a human cultivator at the nascent soul stage. A 4th rank demon beast is equivalent to a human nascent soul true lord. According to the information I've seen in the Lu family library, within the Jianghu country cultivation realm where I'm situated, the nascent soul stage is the ceiling. Only the Heavenly Sword sect has a nascent soul true lord in residence. Even the Qingyun sect that I tried to enter through the assessments doesn't have a nascent soul true lord presiding over it. If the 9 Netherhound can grow into a 4th rank demon beast, I could walk sideways through Jianghu country's cultivation realm with complete impunity, Lu Changxing said with a trace of excitement and exhilaration. In the cultivation realm of Jianghu country where he resided, the strongest power was known as Heavenly Sword sect. Within its gates sat a nascent soul true lord. Beneath it were Qingyun sect, Wuxia sect, and Spirit Taming sect, the 3 great immortal sects. Although these 3 great immortal sects didn't have a nascent soul true lord at their helm, they each possessed several nascent soul immortals and had very profound foundations. Beyond the 3 great immortal sects were 2 sects, 3 cities and 3 aristocratic families, making up 8 great powers. All 8 powers were headed by a nascent soul immortal and were considered the pinnacle forces within Jianghu country's cultivation realm. As for cultivation families like the Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain, which only had a foundation establishment stage cultivator at their helm, there were many, and it was impossible to record them all in the books. Moreover, Lu Changxing noted that the book he saw was almost 100 years old. The content recorded therein was likely to have changed considerably by now. But a moment later, Lu Changxing shook his head again. Even if one cultivates to the peak of the Qi refinement realm, one would only have a lifespan of 100 years. Breaking through to the foundation establishment stage would only extend one's life by another 100 years, living to be a bit over 200. Only a nascent soul immortal can have a lifespan of 500 years. Therefore, if I can't break through to the nascent soul stage and become a nascent soul true lord myself, even if the 9 Netherhound grows into a 4th rank beast, it wouldn't mean much to me. The lifespan of demon beasts is generally several times that of humans. For demon beasts, a 9 Netherhound managing to grow into a 4th rank within 500 years is already quite fast. But for humans, this period is a bit lengthy. After all, even the lifespan of a nascent soul immortal barely exceeds 500 years. Even if one consumes life-extending elixirs or heavenly treasures, at most a few more decades or a century could be added, but ultimately, it is limited. Only after breaking through to the nascent soul stage can one's lifespan surpass 1,000 years. With a 500-year pinnacle period, reaching maturity in 200 or 300 years shouldn't be a problem. Maturity should be equivalent to a 3rd-rank beast at the core formation stage. So, growing into a 2nd-rank beast in around 100 years would also be feasible. Looking at it this way, it seems not too bad. Moreover, in the world of cultivation, there are methods to tame and control beasts, including many techniques that can speed up the growth of demon beasts. Lu Changxing licked his lips, thinking to himself. The growth of demon beasts can be divided into infancy, growth, maturity, and peak, 4 stages. The 9 Netherhound cub he won in the lottery naturally was in its infancy. But according to the 100 arts of cultivation he knew of, there existed a skill called beast taming. It involves domesticating demon beasts into spiritual beasts for cultivators to utilize. The pet beasts that Lu Changsheng's system awarded naturally didn't need domestication and were absolutely loyal to him. However, within these beast taming techniques, there were many husbandry methods capable of accelerating the growth of spiritual beasts. Lu Changxing was aware that the spirit taming sect, one of the 3 great immortal sects, was renowned for nurturing spiritual beasts, with each disciple taming and controlling a spiritual pet. This isn't urgent at the moment, I can look into it later if I get the chance to obtain the method for nurturing spiritual beasts. For now, I'll just raise it normally. But right now, it's inconvenient for me to take the 9 Netherhound out of the system space. Otherwise, if others see that I seemingly conjured a demon beast cub out of thin air, I'd have no way to explain. It just so happens that I need to make a trip to the secular world soon. When I return, I can take it out and claim I bought it to guard the house or to be a companion for the children. After some contemplation, Lu Changxing decided not to take the cub out of the system space but to continue keeping it inside. Like system rewards, keeping it within the system space without taking it out doesn't affect it in the slightest. But once it's taken out, there's no way to put it back in. P.S. Thank you book friend 20180320084218622 for the 5,000 coin reward. I feel a deep sense of recognition. Also, thank you Fatty Head for the 500 coin reward, and book friend 20200911024200054 for the 100 coin reward. Chapter 23, Chi Refinement Level 3. One time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, more than 3 months had passed. In those 3 months, Lu Changsheng's 11th, 12th, and 13th children were all born. However, all 3 of these children also lacked a spiritual root. Regarding this, Lu Changxing had already completely let go, knowing that it couldn't be forced. But he did not stop having children because of this probability. After all, having many children is considered the true path to happiness and good fortune. As long as he kept at it, and the base number of children increased, there would eventually be a child with a spiritual root. Moreover, as the number of children grew, the system would also provide rewards. In these 3 months, 2 more of Lu Changsheng's concubines became pregnant with their 2nd child. In 3 years, with 3 wives and 6 concubines, he had fathered 13 children. And with 3 more on the way, he had made quite a name for himself in the Lu family's Jianghu Valley. Everyone knew that the Lu family had taken a son-in-law who was exceptionally talented in talisman making but also fond of female company and having children. During this time, Lu Yuanding also visited Lu Changxing to chat. His words were of admonishment, hoping Lu Changxing would not indulge too much in pleasures of the flesh and should focus more on cultivation and the talisman path, lest he waste his life away. Faced with such advice, Lu Changxing naturally nodded in agreement. But he also expressed that his spiritual root was too poor and that he had little ambition in life. He was content with his current life and only wished for his descendants to fill his home in the future. If he could have a few children with spiritual roots, he would then devote all his energy to nurturing them. Hearing this, Lu Yuanding was momentarily at a loss for words and brought up a matter with Lu Changxing. The Lu family had a rule that all children who had not yet shown a spiritual root by the age of 6 should be sent to the secular world. Even if the time could be extended, they would definitely have to be sent to the secular world by their teenage years. They couldn't stay in Jianghu mountain indefinitely. Because these children lacked spiritual roots and were unable to cultivate, staying on Jianghu mountain would mean they could only perform menial tasks. Eaglets must one day soar into the sky, facing the strong winds and tempests. Without a spiritual root, keeping children by one side only hinders them. Moreover, the Lu family had its own clan and industries in the secular world, ensuring these children a life of wealth, clothing, and food without worry. If Lu Changxing agreed, his children could also be placed within the Lu family of the secular world in the future. After hearing Lu Yuanding's words, Lu Changxing felt a bit heavy-hearted. In 3 years, he had not completely adapted to the rules of this world. He found it difficult to accept the idea of sending his children into the secular world at the age of 6. Considering he now had a total of 13 children, and only one with a spiritual root. But he also understood that Lu Yuanding was right. If the children lacked spiritual roots, keeping them by his side was not beneficial for the children. As parents, one must let go and allow them to grow. So, Lu Changxing planned in his heart to wait until the children were a bit older before sending them to the secular world. To let the children go out, explore, and see the world for themselves. Before that, as he had thought before, he would find Li Feiyu to teach his children martial arts. Not only to strengthen their bodies but to give them some ability to protect themselves if they encounter dangers in the secular world in the future. After all, not only is the cultivation world dangerous, but there are also many conflicts and disputes in the secular world, and he couldn't possibly watch over all these children at all times. Of course, he couldn't deny his own ulterior motive. He hoped that training his children in martial arts would bring some improvement to his own strength. And in the future, if his children took root and established themselves in the secular world, they could also spread out and form a Lu family of their own, a martial household. If there were descendants with spiritual roots in the family, he could send them to his side for guidance. This was also the current model for many cultivation families, flourishing in both the secular and cultivation worlds. On this day, sitting in the practice room and cultivating, Lu Changxing's body surged with a wave of energy, causing his vestment robe to flutter without wind. 3rd level energy refinement. Finally, I've made a breakthrough before the meeting. After a moment, his breath settled, and Lu Changxing opened his eyes, his face full of joy. It took him 1 year and 4 months to break through from the 1st level energy refinement to the 2nd level. But to break through from the 2nd level to the 3rd took only 10 months. The significant improvement was due not only to Jianghu Valley's 2nd grade spiritual vein but also to the spiritual root talent of his 7th son, Lu Xianxia, and the enhancement of his cultivation resources. He now had 10 spirit stones, 30 gene of spirit rice, and a bottle of yellow dragon elixir every month. Since the children were still young and had no expenses, and his wives had no need to spend money. So most of these spirit stones could be used on himself to improve his cultivation speed. Though his talent was lacking, and it was difficult to achieve much on his own, he could not afford to slack. After all, to soar on the success of a child, the child must first grow up. Besides, among his 13 children, now only 7 have a spiritual root, and even then, it's a lower grade spiritual root. For now, he still had to rely on his own efforts as a father. 3 years have passed. I'm finally going to take a trip outside. Lu Changxing stood up and straightened his vestment robe. He approached the bronze mirror and looked at his reflection. The once unremarkable and ordinary face had gained more defined contours, and the somewhat dark skin had become fair and delicate, making him appear much more handsome. It is said that clothes make the man, just as the saddle makes the horse. Dressed in an azure vestment robe, as if tailored for him, perfectly fitted, it accentuated a tall and slender stance. A gentle and handsome face, a tall figure exuding an easy and confident air, his whole being radiated an inexplicable nobility. Compared to his appearance and aura from 3 years ago, the change was as different as heaven and earth. This included the effects of cultivating the immortal beauty technique which refined and improved his appearance. It was also a result of bodily development, living in comfort, as well as the awakening of past life memories and activating the system, which brought changes to his mindset and outlook. The effect of the immortal beauty technique alone wasn't this pronounced. Looking at his reflection, Lu Changxing chuckled softly and went to inform his wife that he was going to venture far and return to the secular world for a while. This matter had long been discussed with his wife and also applied for through the Lu family. The Lu family agreed readily, even asking Lu Changxing if he needed someone to accompany him. During his half-year stay at Jianghu Valley, Lu Changxing had perfectly completed all of the Lu family's talisman-making tasks, performing very well, hence the Lu family valued him even more. For this, Lu Changxing expressed that he was just having a small gathering with a good friend and would also visit home to handle some affairs, and that he didn't need accompaniment. Having someone with him was safer, but it was also restrictive and inconvenient. The Lu family didn't insist and after giving him a transmission talisman, told him to be careful on the way. Having already packed his belongings in his storage bag, he placed it inside his robe and went to Qingzhou Villa, knocking on Li Feiyu's door. "I thought something came up and you weren't going," Li Feiyu, holding his child, opened the door of the courtyard and said with a smile upon seeing Lu Changxing. His child had just turned 3 months old, a little girl. "I was almost at the point of breaking through, so it ended up being delayed to now," Lu Changxing explained. "You've broken through to the 3rd level of energy refinement?" Li Feiyu exclaimed with surprise. During this time, Lu Changxing had not stopped practicing his spells. Techniques like the flame bullet technique, wind control skill, object manipulating technique, aura concealment technique, spiritual eye technique, sound transmitting technique, and such, he had mastered all the primary level spells. Spells, like talisman making, once you get through the entry stage, everything that follows becomes much simpler. Currently, Lu Changxing was using the aura concealment technique to slightly restrain his spiritual energy, so Li Feiyu hadn't noticed Lu Changxing's recent breakthrough to the 3rd level of energy refinement. "Yes, so as soon as I made the breakthrough, I came over," Lu Changxing nodded and added. "TSK, just breaking through to the 3rd level of energy refinement, your cultivation speed might catch up with someone with a middle-grade spiritual root soon." Li Feiyu couldn't help but shake his head in admiration. He had been far ahead of Lu Changxing during the 1st and 2nd level of qi refinement. But now, while he was still at the peak of the 2nd level, Lu Changxing had overtaken him by a step, breaking through to the 3rd level sooner. This made him feel quite moved and a touch envious. "Hey, it's all thanks to external resources that I've reached this point. It's going to be hard moving from the 3rd to the 4th level of energy refinement," Lu Changxing waved his hand and explained. "A family knows their own affairs. If it wasn't for a bottle of yellow dragon elixir each month and using all his spirit stones to buy spiritual vegetables, spiritual tea, and demon beast meat, how could he have possibly broken through so fast? He would have needed at least another 1.5 years of cultivation. Moreover, the 9 levels of qi refinement, the first 3 levels are straightforward given some time, presenting no particular difficulty. But breaking through from the 3rd level to the 4th is difficult. It marks the transition from the primary stage to the middle stage of qi refinement, where bottlenecks exist. And the lower the spiritual root, the harder it is to overcome these bottlenecks. I believe this won't be a big problem for you. Are we setting off now?" Li Feiyu didn't dwell on the topic and changed the subject. "I'm ready to leave at any time. It's up to you whether you still need to prepare anything," Lu Changxing replied. "I've been ready for a while now, let's go," Li Feiyu said. He handed the child to a recently acquired concubine in the backyard, then set out from his home with Lu Changxing. Chapter 24, heading to Rui Prefecture. _1 Lu Changsheng and Li Feiyu first rented 2 spirit steeds from Uncle Fu, along with a map. Otherwise, how the two of them would go to Rui Prefecture was a question. The spirit steeds were the same as the ones they rode when they first came to Jianghu Mountain. As for the map, it was a map of Jiang country. Jiang country's territory was vast, encompassing 9 provinces. Each province governed 9 prefectures, each prefecture governed 9 counties, and each county had many villages beneath it. Places like Jianghu Mountain, though not under the rule of Jiang country, were still considered within its territory. The Rui prefecture that Lu Changsheng and Li Feiyu were headed to was a major prefecture under the jurisdiction of Qing province. Lu Changsheng's ancestral home was also in Rui prefecture. However, it was just a small mountain village under Qinghe County of Nanyu prefecture within Rui prefecture. After looking over the rough route on the map, the two mounted their spirit steeds and set off. Before I realized it, 3 years had passed. After leaving Jianghu Mountain, Li Feiyu thought about how he had gone from a worldly martial hero, one of the young masters, to a son-in-law in the cultivation world, and he felt quite emotional. Yeah, 3 years, I wonder how Hong Yi and Han Lin are doing. Lu Changsheng also felt somewhat emotional. He remembered that 3 years ago, he awakened his memory during the Immortal sex examination and then became a son-in-law in the Lu family. Overall, Lu Changsheng was quite satisfied with his growth over these 3 years. Hong Yi, born into the Rui Marquis mansion, already had the strength of the 3rd level energy refinement back then, and he must have broken through to the 4th level energy refinement by now. As for Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing, they are cultivating in the Qingyun sect, and I estimate they are around the 3rd or 4th level energy refinement as well. It's just Xiaoxia. With her 4th grade spiritual root, I have no idea how far she has cultivated in 3 years. Li Feiyu looked up at the azure sky and spoke out loud. Back then, among the 6 of us, Hong Yi was exposed to cultivation early on because he was born into the Rui Marquis mansion, and he had the power of the 3rd level energy refinement. However, Hong Yi only possessed an 8th grade spiritual root, and even though he returned to the Marquis mansion and had access to resources, they were definitely limited, so his improvement in 3 years wouldn't be too significant. Whereas Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing had 7th and 6th grade spiritual roots, respectively. Even if they were cultivating in a cultivation sect like Qingyun sect, they wouldn't be expected to get too far ahead in such a short time. Only Xiaoxia's 4th grade spiritual root was beyond their speculation. After speaking, Li Feiyu thought of Lu Changsheng, who had now also broken through to the 3rd level energy refinement. That meant that among the 6 of them, he had the lowest cultivation level, with only the 2nd level energy refinement, and his heart couldn't help but feel a touch of sadness. It should be about the same, the gap wouldn't be too big in just 3 years. Lu Changsheng nodded and said. He felt that Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing were probably at the 3rd level energy refinement. After all, the 2 of them were only 7th and 6th grade spiritual roots. If they had broken through to the 4th level energy refinement in 3 years, then the conditions of the immortal sex would be many times better than he had imagined. Seeing Li Feiyu suddenly fall silent and look somewhat despondent after speaking, Lu Changsheng paused and guessed the reason. Once you got to know Li Feiyu, he appeared quite amiable and casual. But Lu Changsheng knew that the latter was actually quite proud at heart. This was normal. In the past, as the young deputy head of the Crimson Whale gang, Li Feiyu was a top-notch expert in the martial world even at a young age. Calling him a youthful prodigy was by no means an overstatement. But now, 3 years had passed, and among the 6 who had embarked on the path of cultivation together, his situation seemed to be the worst. Moreover, he still owed the Lu family for 48 children, a thought that was distressing. Feiyu, don't think too much about the matters concerning the Lu family for now. As for the matter of having children, let's wait a few years. Once my talisman master skills improve further, I'll try to negotiate with the family head to get your obligation reduced. Lu Changsheng spoke. He was blessed with the system of multiple children bring fortune, so he wasn't concerned about 50, 100, 200, or even 1,000 children. He was willing to have them all. But Li Feiyu did not have such a system. Indeed, 50 children seemed a bit too much. Not only would it affect my cultivation, but once I leave the Lu family, the child would no longer be mine, which is truly difficult to accept. As a friend, a good brother, I'd naturally help out if it's within my power. However, right now I'm just a first-grade lower-grade talisman master, with limited authority. I plan to wait another year or so until I can reveal myself as a first-grade middle-grade talisman master, which would give me more say, and then try to help Li Feiyu with this matter. It's nothing, how could I trouble you with such a thing? Besides, Li Feiyu fell silent for a moment and then shook his head. During this time, Lu Changxing had already helped him a lot. Every time he came over, he would bring him gifts, and he felt embarrassed to keep troubling Lu Changxing. Besides, he felt that this matter would also be troublesome for Lu Changxing. But before he could finish talking, Lu Changxing directly waved his hand and said, "We're so close, you're being a stranger by saying that. Besides, I also need your help with something." "What is it?" Li Feiyu, somewhat moved, nodded and asked. "I'm going home to visit my family and it's impossible to bring them over here. So, I would like to trouble you to ask the Crimson Whale Gang to take care of my family in the future," Lu Changxing said. He knew that he would eventually leave the Lu family and couldn't always live under others' shelter, so naturally he couldn't bring his family to Jianghu Mountain. Not only is it inconvenient, but he also didn't want to do so. As for taking care of his family, he was not in a position to do so. But he also could not neglect them entirely. So, he thought of Li Feiyu's Crimson Whale Gang, which had significant influence in the secular world, and decided to ask Li Feiyu's family to help take care of his own. He didn't ask for much, just to ensure that his family would have a lifetime of carefree sustenance and wealth. "This little matter is hardly troublesome, leave it to me," Li Feiyu said directly upon hearing this. After all, he was the young leader of the Crimson Whale Gang. Though he had been away from home for many years and likely lost the position of young leader, the leader was still his father, and he was confident that this matter would not be a problem. Also, I have so many children that it's impossible for all of them to have a spiritual root. So I was thinking, for any child who cannot engage in cultivation, I'd like to trouble you to teach them martial arts," Lu Changxing continued. Though it would be quite some time before the children could grow up and learn martial arts, since they were on the topic, he just said it outright and asked for any advice on this matter. After all, Li Feiyu grew up practicing martial arts from a young age and was very clear about these things. Martial arts? That's naturally not a problem, it's just that martial arts training is very hard. As long as you are willing, it's fine. Li Feiyu replied, seemingly recalling something, and shook his head. He could tell that Lu Changxing was very indulgent with his children on a regular basis and didn't seem like someone who would allow his children to endure hardship. "For such matters, I will follow their own choices when the time comes. Besides, what's a little hardship?" Lu Changxing said with a smile. He naturally didn't have any reservations about such things. Although he would not force his children to do anything, he was also not willing to spoil them to the point of being unwilling to let them face hardships and grow up spoiled and pampered. Moreover, this first group of children would be the foundation for building his family in the future. He would naturally put in more effort to not let them go astray and to help them become successful. And so, the two of them chatted idly while making their way. At night, they took turns keeping watch, to avoid any accidents. Chapter 25, Friends Reunited. _1 Due to Lu Changxing's breakthrough to the third level of qi refinement, they were delayed in setting out on their journey. Thus, worried about missing their 3-year appointment, the two traveled day and night without stop. It took them only 19 days to rush from Jianghu Mountain to Rui County City. The journey was very smooth. Aside from encountering several fierce birds and beasts, they faced no real danger. When they arrived at Rui County City, the sky had already darkened. "Is this Rui County City?" Lu Changxing looked at the city before him with some surprise. This Rui prefecture was several times more prosperous and grand than he had imagined. The entire city was majestic and immense, resembling a giant beast sprawled out. The lights within the city were as bright as daylight, and the closely arranged residences, buildings, and shops were bustling with activity. The streets were filled with bustling crowds, weaving through like shuttles, and from afar, one could see several towering structures that reached into the clouds. It seems that this world's mundane realm is more prosperous than I had imagined. Lu Changxing gazed at the bustling city before him, feeling a surge of emotion. Before his memories had awakened, he was just the son of an ordinary farmer, and the furthest place he had been to was Qinghe County. Not to mention Rui Prefecture, he had never even been to Nanyu Prefecture, which was above Qinghe County. This also made him quite unfamiliar with these big mundane cities. Now looking at Rui County gave him a feeling similar to a country person arriving in the Grand Shanghai. After entering the city, the two asked for directions and made their way to Rui Tower. Rui Tower, as expected as Rui Prefecture's largest restaurant, was more than 10 zhang high. A jade Rui hung in front of the building, with the three characters, Rui Tower, engraved on it, very splendid. Red lanterns adorned each corner, and the walls showcased murals of illuminated landscapes and beautiful women. Li Feiyu stepped forward and stated they were looking for Hong Yi. The doorman had already been instructed, and upon hearing this, immediately went in to notify. Soon, a tall figure clad in a vestment robe and opulent attire emerged from Rui Tower. "Brother Li, Brother Lu." Hong Yi greeted the two warmly upon seeing them. But when he saw Lu Changxing, he couldn't help but take a few extra glances, as if he could hardly recognize him. Now, Lu Changxing, both in appearance and temperament, had quite a noticeable change from 3 years ago. "Brother Hong, you look as though you don't recognize me?" Seeing the other's reaction, Lu Changxing also joked. "If Brother Li weren't here, with such a change in Brother Lu, I really would have hesitated to recognize you right away." Hong Yi shook his head, his face filled with a smiling sense of awe as he spoke. He was much more enthusiastic and generous than he was 3 years ago. "Every time I meet him after a few months, I feel he has changed too much, let alone the long separation you've had." Li Feiyu chimed in. He would meet with Lu Changxing every few months to catch up on old times. He didn't feel much at the moment, but looking back, he always felt that Lu Changxing had some indescribable transformation. "Indeed, Brother Lu, what's going on with this change?" "It's massive." Brother Li, on the other hand, hasn't changed much. Hong Yi nodded and continued, "This is not the place for idle chat. I've already reserved rooms and a private booth at Rui Tower. Brother Li, Brother Lu, you've been traveling all the way here, let's go upstairs to welcome you properly and wash away the dust of the journey. Xiao Xia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin haven't arrived yet, but they should be here within the next couple of days." Through the conversation, Hong Yi led the two into Rui Tower. Inside, it was resplendent with gold and jade, and the eaves and rafters were intricately carved. In the center stood a spiral staircase. The three ascended the stairs and arrived at an elegant private booth on the 9th floor. Through the windows, they could directly enjoy the beautiful night view outside. "Brother Li, Brother Lu, it's been 3 years since we've seen each other. How have you been in the Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain?" After taking their seats, Hong Yi enthusiastically served the two tea and asked. "It's been all right," Li Feiyu responded succinctly. He felt there wasn't much to talk about his own situation. "I've been managing," Lu Changxing replied concisely as well. "If Brother Li says so, I naturally believe it, but with you, Brother Lu, I don't buy it. Over the past few years, I, Hong Yi, have frequently interacted with people, and I consider myself to have some discerning ability. Speaking of which, Brother Lu, that garment you're wearing, if I'm not mistaken, it's a vestment robe, right? Moreover, if I had not previously met and gotten to know Brother Lu, I would have certainly mistaken you for a noble scion from a cultivation family with your appearance and temperament. So, Brother Lu, you're not being truthful, not treating me as a friend, huh?" Hong Yi said with a smile, adopting a somewhat exaggerated posture of being upset. Even though the three of them hadn't been particularly close before, under Hong Yi's words, they seemed to become much closer. "I truly haven't hidden anything from Brother Hong. If anything, it's that I discovered my talent for talisman making in the Lu family and have now become a talisman master, so my living conditions are quite decent." Lu Changxing shook his head and spoke thus. This wasn't him trying to show off. Rather, there was no need to hide such matters. Coming to this meeting, he did have some objectives in mind. He wanted to connect with Xiaoxia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin, the three disciples from the Immortal sects, and maintain their friendship. But to maintain a relationship, one naturally needs to have capital. Otherwise, what reason would the son-in-law of a cultivation family have to socialize with disciples of the Immortal sects? Currently, being a first-grade talisman master was the capital he had on the table. SSS, who would have thought Brother Lu had such talent? To think that in just 3 short years, you've become a talisman master. I'd like to offer a toast to Brother Lu with tea in place of wine. Startled by these words, Hong Yi gasped, his demeanor warming considerably as he raised his cup of tea. Brother Hong is too kind. I'm just an elementary talisman master after all, nowhere close to Brother Hong's free and easy manner. Lu Changxing also lifted his tea in response. The Lord of Rui County City was none other than the Marquis of Rui. And that was Hong Yi's father. Within secular society, his status was certainly out of the ordinary. But seeing how warm and polite the latter was now, a stark contrast to 3 years ago, it seemed he had endured quite a few setbacks over the years. I'm merely an extraneous son, my status is hardly worth mentioning, certainly nothing compared to Brother Lu. Besides, Brother Lu has become an elementary talisman master in such a short time, which shows extraordinary talent, a true rare gem among men. It's very possible that you could become a second-grade talisman master in the future. Hong Yi shook his head in admiration, then spoke with a sincere expression on his face. You flatter me, Brother Hong. Hong Yi's words indeed made Lu Changxing feel quite comfortable. He remembered how, 3 years ago, there was an arrogant air about Hong Yi. Although he didn't belittle him and Han Lin with cold ridicule or do anything hostile, his actions and mannerisms had a certain air of superiority, a disdain for them. Thus, the stark change in his attitude was surprisingly pleasing to Lu Changxing. Of course, Lu Changxing wasn't so proud as to leverage his status and engage in empty pleasantries with Hong Yi because of his changed attitude. With Hong Yi driving the conversation, the three of them gradually became more familiar and engaged in more intimate discussions. It was as though they were old friends reuniting after many years. In this way, under Hong Yi's enthusiastic hospitality, Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu stayed at the Rui Tower for 3 days. 3 days later, Xiaoxia, Zhao Qingqing, and Han Lin arrived in Rui. Receiving the news, Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu came downstairs with Hong Yi to welcome them. No sooner had they descended than they saw Xiaoxia and her companions. Brother Feiyu, young Master Ho, are you Lu Changxing? Xiaoxia, dressed in a long white dress as pristine as snow, with an extraordinarily beautiful oval face, greeted Lu Changxing and the others with a bright smile as she approached. Her frank disposition and easy grace shone through her smile, brightening up everyone around her. Zhao Qingqing gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Her hair was simply done up, and she wore a long, verdant dress. While her appearance couldn't be called stunning, it was delicate and pretty. Especially standing next to the exquisitely beautiful Xiaoxia, she seemed overshadowed, merely a green leaf serving as a foil. But she had fair skin and a tall, outstanding figure, with her slender legs and waist particularly eye-catching. Brother Changxing, Brother Feiyu, young Master Ho, Han Lin also greeted everyone. Compared to the 2 women, he appeared quite ordinary with no particular presence. Dressed in a grayish-brown robe with somewhat dark skin and unremarkable features, he was neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. Chapter 26, Reunion after 10 years. _1 Rui Tower, Condensing Immortal Pavilion. Lu Changxing, Li Feiyu, Hong Yi, Han Lin, Xiaoxiu, and Zhao Qingqing, the 6 of them reunited after 3 years. Over the span of 3 years, everyone had stepped from the secular world onto the path of cultivation, all experiencing significant changes. Miss Xiao, in the cultivation world, strength reigns supreme, so you naturally deserve to take the seat of honor, Hong Yi said to Xiaoxiu with enthusiasm. This enthusiasm was not as fervent as it had been 3 years ago, carrying a hint of pursuit. It was now like the hearty warmth between friends. Because Hong Yi knew very well that now, he simply did not match up to Xiao Shiyu. He hadn't won her over 3 years ago, and to now reveal a longing pursuit was nothing but self-humiliation. He wouldn't even be able to maintain a friendship. If Marquis says so, then I won't be polite. After a slight refusal, Xiao Shiyu no longer declined politely. 3 years ago, her personality was candid and lively, and after 3 years, she hadn't changed much in that regard, becoming even more bright and generous. Changxing bro, you've changed so much, I almost didn't recognize you. Hearing from the Marquis, you and Brother Li are serving as live-in sons-in-law in a cultivation family. Seems like life's been good, huh? At this moment, Han Lin said to Lu Changxing in a casual way. Back then, among the 6 of them, Xiao Shiyu was the esteemed lady with a keen interest in the Jianghu life, often chatting with Li Feiyu about it, hence their relatively good rapport. As for Han Lin and Lu Changxing, they had similar backgrounds and personalities, resulting in a good friendship. It's just that I've practiced cultivation, so some changes are normal, Lu Changxing said with a smile, appearing quite magnanimous. Although his own change was significant, it was pretty much related to the Immortal Beauty technique. But as described by the Immortal Beauty technique, in the end, it was all because of his own good foundation. There was nothing to feel embarrassed about. This isn't just a little change, your transformation is even bigger than mine. They say girls become unrecognizable after their 18th year. Could it be there's something like boys transforming after 22? Xiao Shiyu chided playfully. 3 years ago, she was already beautiful as a flower under the moon, and now, after another 3 years, she had fully blossomed. Indeed, her grace outshone the flowers in their beauty, her features were more vibrant than spring itself, and every frown and smile bewitching the heart and soul. This made Lu Changxing, despite having 9 wives and concubines, take a few more glances at her. After all, not only was Xiao Shiyu exceptionally beautiful, but she also possessed a 4th-grade spiritual root. If she could bear him a few children, there was not only a high probability of birthing offspring with spiritual roots but also a chance of producing children with middle-grade spiritual roots. However, the idea of a 4th-grade spiritual root immortal sect disciple bearing children for him was just unrealistic. Probably, he could only accomplish that in his dreams for a long while. If there is such a thing as a girl blossoming at 18, then surely there is also a lad transforming at 20, and I am definitely an example, Lu Changxing replied with a smile, his gaze clear and holding neither subservience nor arrogance. With the confidence given by the system, Lu Changxing could now face anyone with equanimity and treat everyone equally. You have talent. I have a system. You have a background. I have a system. You have strength. I have a system. So, we are all more or less the same. You are graced with talent and background, promising a limitless future. I am accompanied by a system, and as long as I work hard, I am sure to achieve something great in the future too. Soon after, in this familiar atmosphere, everyone quickly started to make small talk. However, it was mainly Hong Yi and Xiao Shiyu starting conversations and looking for topics. Lu Changxing and Han Lin were the types to respond when asked, chiming in when the topic interested them. Li Feiyu and Zhao Qingqing, on the other hand, spoke relatively little, only speaking up when asked. In the process of this conversation, everyone mentioned their recent situations, allowing Lu Changxing to gain some understanding of everyone's circumstances. Though Hong Yi was the son of a marquis from the Rui prefecture, with a 3rd-level energy refinement cultivation 3 years ago, he hadn't had access to many cultivation resources over the years and had to earn them through his own efforts, so he was still at the peak of the 3rd-level energy refinement without having made a breakthrough. This also made Lu Changxing realize that the bottleneck from the 3rd-level energy refinement to the 4th level was much more difficult than he had imagined. Due to Xiao Xia's 4th-grade spiritual root, upon entry into the Qingyun sect she was immediately favored by an elder and became an inner sect disciple, and is now at the 4th-level energy refinement cultivation level. Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing, although also disciples of Qingyun sect, had ordinary spiritual roots and were only outer sect disciples, a world apart from Xiao Xia. Inner sect disciples could focus solely on cultivation, but outer sect disciples had to spend time learning a skill in addition to their cultivation. Because the sect advocated for complementary advantages and mutual assistance, the internal division of labor was precise. Some excelled in combat, others in formation, alchemy, artifact refining, talisman making, cultivating spiritual fields, growing spiritual medicine. Disciples with good talent naturally focused on cultivation. Those with average talent would see if they had a knack for something else. Coming from a family of blacksmiths, Han Lin chose artifact refining as his skill. His talent in that area was not bad either, and he was currently apprenticing under an artifact refiner. As for his cultivation level, he was at the peak of the second-level energy refinement. Zhao Qingxing chose to apprentice as a pharmacist for her skill. Her cultivation level was a bit higher than Han Lin's, having already broken through to the third-level energy refinement. After hearing everyone's recent updates, Lu Changxing knew that the gap between the Immortal sect disciples and himself was not as big as he had imagined. However, he knew this was just the beginning. Over time, the gap between them would gradually widen. Changxing, you truly deserve to be the first to awake at the test of conscience during the 4th round of the Qingyun sect's examination, one said. Indeed, that saying is true, true gold shines no matter where it is, another added. After everyone talked about their own situations and heard that Lu Changxing had become an elementary talisman master and obtained a 3rd-level energy refinement cultivation level from being a son-in-law, they were all extremely astonished. Han Lin even voiced his amazement, revealing a piece of information. So Lu, you were actually the first in the test of conscience during the 4th round of the Immortal sect exams, said Hong Yi, along with other people, all turning with surprised glances. That's right, after I became an apprentice artifact refiner, I happened to meet a senior brother from the exams and inquired about why Changxing wasn't selected. This senior brother also remembered Changxing and said that if it weren't for his 9th grade spiritual root and older age, he definitely could have entered Qingyun sect based on his performance at the test of conscience, said Han Lin with a touch of regret. It's a bit of a pity. Li Feiyu also felt sorry for Lu Changxing. The others nodded slightly, feeling it was quite regrettable. Even if Lu Changxing had achieved so much in 3 years, astonishing everyone, they still felt it wasn't as good as entering Qingyun's sect and becoming a disciple of the Immortal sects. There's nothing to regret, I think things are pretty good as they are, replied Lu Changxing upon hearing this news, without any apparent regret or pity. If he had been accepted into Qingyun's sect, he would certainly spend several years accumulating before he would consider getting married and starting a family. In such a case, a lot of time and years would have slipped by, and it wouldn't necessarily be much better than his current situation. Chapter 27, Bullhead Mountain. _1 Several days later. Rui Tower. Brother Lu, I've gathered some information. About 300 miles away from Rui Prefecture, at Bullhead Mountain, there is a gathering place for loose cultivators holding a transaction fair. It's likely to continue for another 5 or 6 days. If you wish to participate, take this communication talisman with you. Once you arrive at Bullhead Mountain, use it, and someone will open the formation to guide you in. Hong Yi knocked on the door and said to Lu Changxing. As he spoke, he took out a brownish-yellow talisman. Thank you, Brother Hong. This must have cost you quite a bit. These talismans are my own creation, and they will serve as a token of my appreciation. Lu Changxing handed Hong Yi 3 basic, lower-grade first-grade talismans as he spoke. This communication talisman belonged to the category of basic talismans and wasn't very valuable. However, since the other party had helped him gather information and acquire this, it must have taken some effort. In matters of reciprocal favors, he naturally wouldn't let others come off worse. Moreover, Hong Yi held a significant position in the secular world, and he was keen to maintain this connection. Who knows, perhaps in the future when his own children settled in the secular world, he might need to trouble Hong Yi. Hong Yi's eyes heated up at the sight of Lu Changxing's 3 talismans. But he waved his hands and said, Brother Lu is too polite. This didn't cost much, please don't bother. Brother Hong, if you're so polite, you'll feel embarrassed asking for your help in the future. Lu Changxing spoke thus, placing the talismans into Hong Yi's hands. If that's the case, then I won't refuse disrespectfully. Seeing this, Hong Yi didn't decline and accepted the talismans. He then clasped his hands and said, "Brother Lu, I, Hong Yi, still have some contacts here in Rui Prefecture. Should you need anything in the future, just give the word." Now that Lu Changxing had become a talisman master and was so generous, Hong Yi was, of course, very willing to develop a good relationship with Lu Changxing. "Sure, if there's anything in the future, I won't be shy." Lu Changxing returned the gesture with a clasped hand salute. "By the way, Brother Lu, you should be cautious when attending such meetings. Places like these where loose cultivators gather are a mix of good and bad characters, and lacking a great cultivator to keep order, robber cultivators often target solo practitioners. If Brother Lu is going to sell talismans, and if there aren't many, I could represent the Rui Marquis Mansion and transact with Brother Lu to take them all." Seeing that Lu Changxing had easily provided 3 talismans, Hong Yi speculated that Lu Changxing must have a considerable number of talismans on him and was possibly going to sell them. He voiced this out loud. Upper-class individuals in the secular world mostly know about the routes to cultivation and will cultivate themselves. The Rui Marquis Mansion was such a place, with more than one cultivator within. But they were all energy refinement cultivators, only slightly better than the average loose cultivator. For talismans, items that are always in demand, there naturally exists a need. However, he was still able to purchase low-level talismans when he wanted to. Buying from Lu Changxing was not about seeking a bargain. Instead, it was about deepening their relationship and exchange through such transactions. Lu Changxing was currently a lower-grade first-grade talisman master. Looking to the future, not to mention becoming a second-grade talisman master, becoming a superior-grade first-grade talisman master was still a great possibility. Once capable of creating superior-grade first-grade talismans, things would be different. Getting to know a superior-grade first-grade talisman master and having a stable channel for talismans would also aid in his position at the Rui Marquis Mansion. If in the future they became close, and Lu Changxing was willing to supply him with a large quantity of talismans below market price, he would make a significant profit. Perhaps he might even contest for the position of the heir of the Rui Marquis Mansion. "Thank you for your concern, Brother Hong. I'll be careful. I don't have many talismans, just enough for my own protection. But if Brother Hong needs them, I could also sell you some at a low price." Lu Changxing smiled and took out 10 basic, lower-grade first-grade talismans. When he revealed himself as a first-grade talisman master in the Lu family, he had saved up nearly 500 talismans. And in the past 6 months, with the Lu family providing him materials every month, he had saved another 500 or so. That is to say, he now had roughly 1,000 talismans on him. An astonishingly large number. Among these talismans, about half were lower grade and the other half middle grade. If converted into spirit stones, they would be worth 2,000 to 3,000 spirit stones. But one should never flaunt their wealth, so naturally, he wouldn't reveal such things. If Hong Yi wanted them, he was willing to sell some at a low price. Because Lu Changxing knew very well that at this kind of loose cultivator trading fair, it was simply impossible to sell nearly 1,000 talismans. He also wouldn't dare to do so. "How could I impose like that? Just charge the market price," Hong Yi said. He wouldn't try to take advantage of a small benefit at the outset. "Hong brother, take a look and see if these talismans are of any use to you." Lu Changxing handed over the talismans to Hong Yi. "I didn't expect Brother Lu to be able to draw rejuvenation insignias already. It seems Brother Lu will soon be a middle-grade talisman master." Hong Yi exclaimed in surprise upon seeing one of the talismans. Although he didn't know how to make talismans, he was clear on their prices. For first-grade low-quality talismans, depending on the difficulty, the price was between 1 and 2 spirit stones. And a rejuvenation insignia was a low-quality talisman worth 2 spirit stones, with even higher difficulty to draw. "I've barely managed to draw a few," Lu Changxing said, waving his hand dismissively. Initially considering the prospect of making money, most of the first-grade low-quality talismans he had were of higher difficulty. "I will take all these talismans, but I don't have so many spirit stones on me right now. I need to go back and get some from my father before I can make the trade with Brother Lu," Hong Yi said, somewhat embarrassed. Although he was the son of the Rui Marquis, he didn't have many spirit stones either. Also, with the need for cultivation, it was hard to save up any spirit stones. There's no rush. Hong brother, take these talismans first. I plan to ride to Bullhead Mountain to attend the trading fair and drop by my home on the way, Lu Changxing said generously. I'll just keep my steed temporarily with Hong brother, as I'll have to come back here anyway. Lu Changxing was not afraid that Hong Yi would hold a grudge over these talismans. If he did, he would regard it as using these talismans to see someone's true nature. Then I must thank you, brother Lu. Rest assured, I will take good care of the steed, Hong Yi said, clasping his hands in appreciation. Without spending any money and taking these talismans back, it would be easier for his father to believe that he had a close relationship with Lu Changxing, the talisman master. Thank you for the trouble, Hong brother, Lu Changxing said with a slight bow, then obtained a horse and rode toward Bullhead Mountain in Nanyu Prefecture. He didn't have a beast storage bag, and he wasn't sure if he could bring his steed into Bullhead Mountain. To avoid these troubles, he simply decided to ride a horse there. If he lost it, he wouldn't be heartbroken. Having ridden his steed for so long and now being a cultivator, riding a horse presented no difficulty to him. The next day, the air was slightly cool. Lu Changxing rode his horse from Rui County City to Bullhead Mountain. First, he found a farmhouse at the foot of the mountain and left the horse there. Then he went up the mountain alone, arrived at an uninhabited area, and put on a human skin mask he had purchased in advance from his storage bag. Suddenly, his handsome face transformed into the appearance of a rather dull, yellow-skinned young man. He then pulled out a large black cloak and draped it over himself. With the hood drawn up, his entire frame and even his facial features were concealed, making it impossible to discern his appearance. After completing these preparations, Lu Changxing continued up the mountain to the north side of Bullhead Mountain, where there was a slope. According to the villagers, this slope was shrouded in white mist all year round, but Lu Changxing, using the spiritual eye technique, saw the faint fluctuation of spiritual energy and knew at a glance that it was a formation. It must be here, Lu Changxing said to himself as he looked at the mist ahead, confirming that this was indeed his destination. He took out a communication talisman given to him by Hong Yi and activated it with spiritual power. Immediately, the talisman flew out of his hand, dashed into the fog on the small slope, and disappeared. Lu Changxing patiently waited for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Suddenly, the mist in front of him began to roll and parted, revealing a very narrow forest trail that seemed to have no end in sight. After scrutinizing the path for a moment, Lu Changxing stepped forward and walked into it. Chapter 28, Loose Cultivator Gathering. _1 Lu Changxing walked onto the narrow path. Up ahead, it seemed endless, as if there was no end in sight. But after walking about 100 meters, it was as if he had passed through a layer of lake surface, and the scenery before his eyes suddenly changed. It transformed into a valley surrounded by mountains on all sides, lush with greenery and blooming with flowers of various colors. Only behind him, where he had just entered, was there a path shrouded in mist. The valley wasn't large, covering an area of 30 to 40 acres. Around the valley stood buildings and pavilions with ancient charm, resembling a secluded paradise. In the central area of the valley, at this moment, many people were neatly and orderly setting up street stalls, just like mundane small vendors, surrounded by a bustling crowd. The scene before him made Lu Changxing vaguely remember the market days in the countryside of his previous life, the open-air farmers' markets. If he didn't know that this was a gathering place for loose cultivators, and that these were all cultivators, he might have believed it was just a mundane market gathering. There must be a spirit vein beneath this valley. However, it must be an ungraded spirit vein. Its spiritual energy is much weaker than that of Qingzhou Villa. Lu Changxing thought to himself as he headed toward the central area where the stalls were set up. Here, the cultivators' attires varied widely. There were scholars, monks, Daoists, and swordsmen. Some wore long swords and great sabers at their waists, carried giant gourds on their backs, or were accompanied by their spiritual beasts. Of course, there were also many like Lu Changxing, who were enveloped in cloaks from head to toe. High-quality healing pills, martial elixirs, all at affordable prices. 100-year-old ginseng, 100-year-old polygonum multiflorum, all for just 1 spirit stone each. A strip of flood dragon tendon to the highest bidder. 9 Revolutions golden body art, a legacy cultivation technique from a divinity transformation true master, just for 10 spirit stones. Exotic stones found in ancient secret realms, containing curious treasures inside, don't miss out as you pass by. The stall areas were bustling with people coming and going, and many were calling out to sell their wares, making it very lively. Lu Changxing shook his head as he saw some stalls even had pots, pans, meats, fishes, fruits, vegetables and other miscellaneous items. It seemed that this gathering of loose cultivators was a bit more rustic than he had imagined. Or maybe, this was the real bottom layer lifestyle of the cultivation world. Just like ordinary people struggling at the lower echelons of mundane life. The only difference was that one was in the mundane world, the other in the cultivation world. Even if it's as poor as King's Lu family, they still have a foundation establishment ancestor presiding and possess their own spiritual vein blessed land. After wandering around for a while, Lu Changxing had a clear idea of the trading fair. The items for sale at the stalls were diverse, but mostly they were cheap, low-end goods or fakes. Only a small part were items useful for cultivators. In the surrounding houses and pavilions, there were a few shops as well. The items they sold were relatively more formal and high-end. Given the size of this loose cultivator spot, it would be impossible for him to sell off the nearly 1,000 talismans he carried. If he dared to do so, he would likely find it hard to leave Bullhead Mountain. Selling off a part shouldn't be a problem, though. Immediately, Lu Changxing followed the example of others and found an empty spot. He took out a thick stack of talismans from his storage bag and laid them out in front of him. On the wooden board he erected next to him, he wrote that basic first-grade talismans cost 1-2 spirit stones each, and buying 5 would get 1 free. Observing the scene earlier, Lu Changxing didn't see many selling middle-grade first-grade talismans. So after thinking it over, he chose not to take out the middle-grade first-grade talismans, as it would be too conspicuous. As for the pricing, items like magic artifacts, elixir medicines, and talismans were always in solid demand and their prices generally remained stable regardless of location. To make a quick sale, Lu Changxing decided to go for the buy 5 get 1 free deal. Fellow Daoist, for this buy 5 get 1 free deal, can the free one be chosen at will? It wasn't long before people began to inspect the talismans and one of them asked. If you buy 5 of the ones costing 2 spirit stones each, you can choose any you like, otherwise, you can only choose from the ones here that cost 1 spirit stone. Lu Changxing replied, his voice low and hoarse from beneath the black robe. All right. Immediately, the cultivator took 6 talismans valued at 2 spirit stones each and handed 10 spirit stones to Lu Changxing. Following the first deal, people gradually came forward to purchase talismans. Talismans were relatively popular among cultivators, as almost everyone would carry a few for self-defense. With the buy 5 get 1 free offer, and considering that even a layman could tell by the quality of the lines drawn on Lu Changxing's talismans that they were of good quality, they sold well. In just over an hour, the nearly 100 talismans that Lu Changxing had taken out were all sold. Total earnings, 133 spirit stones. Having a craft really does make money, Lu Changxing mused with great satisfaction over his first pot of gold. The cost of producing 100 talismans was around 22 spirit stones. But now he had sold them for 6 times the price. If he had been selling first-grade middle-grade talismans, with each priced between 3 to 5 spirit stones, his profit margin could have doubled. After all, with ordinary talisman-making materials, Lu Changxing's success rate for making first-grade middle-grade talismans was 100%. This was also the confidence that allowed Lu Changxing to leave the Lu family and stand on his own 2 feet in this world. After selling these talismans, Lu Changxing chose not to continue selling more. Because other sellers would only put out about 10 or so talismans, maybe a few dozen at most, his nearly 100 was already quite outrageous. If he sold more, he might very likely draw unwanted attention, so it was better to be cautious. Subsequently, Lu Changxing, with his still-warm spirit stones, began to spend. In one of the shops, Lu Changxing saw advanced talisman paper and advanced spirit ink for sale. However, their quality was quite ordinary, some even poor. Talisman materials were divided into ordinary, advanced, and supreme. But even within these, there were differences in quality based on the raw materials and the manufacturing process. The supplies in this shop were not very good. But with few other options, Lu Changxing inquired about the prices. Talisman paper was priced at 5 spirit stones for a stack of 10, and spirit ink at 5 spirit stones for a box. This was 5 times the price of ordinary talisman paper and ink. The price was normal. Using such advanced materials to make first-grade middle-grade talismans wouldn't leave much room for profit. But for Lu Changxing, who could produce first-grade superior talismans, it was definitely profitable. Immediately, after some bargaining, Lu Changxing spent 66 spirit stones to buy all 12 stacks of the shop's advanced talisman paper and 3 boxes of spirit ink. He continued browsing but didn't see any supreme-grade talisman paper or supreme-grade spirit ink for sale. This was to be expected. Materials for making supreme talismans were a bit too high-end for gatherings of loose cultivators like this. While meandering, Lu Changxing noticed a stall selling books on cultivation. Various records of cultivation, travelogues, and personal notes seemed very interesting to him, and he spent 1 spirit stone for 10 books. Afterward, he came across a stall selling 5 elements spiritual materials. After visiting several stalls and shops, Lu Changxing purchased all the 5 elements spiritual materials he needed for cultivating the immortal beauty technique. These materials were all first-grade middle-grade spiritual materials, not too expensive nor too cheap, totaling 59 spirit stones. Having almost spent all his newly earned spirit stones, Lu Changxing did not leave yet. He continued to look around, hoping to find a better quality talisman brush for sale. He was currently using the gold-tipped talisman brush provided by the Lu family, considered supreme amongst ordinary talisman brushes but not yet a magic artifact. Although it could be used to draw first-grade superior talismans, it was ultimately lacking. After looking around and finding no suitable talisman brush, Lu Changxing could only give up. Reminded that he needed to visit the Crimson Whale gang to find Li Feiyu and ask the gang to look after his family, he ought to bring something with him as a courtesy. So, Lu Changxing bought several bottles of ordinary elixir medicines from another stall. These ordinary elixir medicines were very cheap, made by alchemy apprentices and not graded. The price was similar to that of basic talismans, with 2 bottles for 1 spirit stone. Lu Changxing spent 2 spirit stones on 5 bottles, feeling that was enough, and didn't linger any longer. He reached the narrow path he had come in on and left the valley directly. Once out of the valley and seeing that no one was around, he finally stowed the things he was carrying into his storage bag. Then, with caution always in mind, he took out a featherweight talisman from the storage bag and used it on himself. With a light tap of his toes, his body became as agile as a swallow, and he swiftly descended the mountain. However, just as Lu Changxing had left a short while ago, 3 figures emerged from the valley. The talismans this kid sold were all of extremely high quality, clearly the work of an advanced talisman master, one of them remarked. But this kid is only at the 3rd level of chi refinement and still so cautious trading in this kind of place. He must be a loose cultivator who stumbled upon a fortune, and he's bound to have more good stuff on him, the second one said, eyes gleaming with greed. The 3 cast covetous looks in the direction Lu Changxing had gone, utilized their wind control skill, and chased rapidly. Chapter 29, The First Battle, The Power of Talisman Treasure. _1 Under the enhancement of the featherweight talisman, Lu Changxing moved as light as a swallow and with the stride of a vigorous walker. Just as he reached halfway up the mountain, he suddenly heard noises from behind. Turning his head to look back, he immediately saw 3 figures wearing conical hats, moving as swiftly as the wind, rapidly descending from the mountain. In that instant, Lu Changxing's heart gave a fierce pound and his face darkened. Had he been targeted? This was Lu Changxing's first thought. Otherwise, how could it be such a coincidence? When he had ascended the mountain, he hadn't encountered a single person. And now, as soon as he descended, 3 people were immediately coming down too, all in such a hurry. Moreover, the faces of the 3 figures were obscured by their conical hats. But Lu Changxing caught a glimpse of a robust figure wearing a yellow robe, vaguely recalling him. It seemed like this person had purchased talismans from him before. At this moment, Lu Changxing was at least 60 to 70% certain these 3 were coming for him. Damn it, he had been so careful and restrained, revealing only a few talismans for sale, and yet he had still been marked. A faint gloom appeared on Lu Changxing's face. Without further thought, he immediately took out a middle grade, first grade windwalking talisman and activated it with spiritual power. Suddenly, a cyclone of dark green wind swirled around his body, giving him wind at his heels and a tremendous burst of speed. He hurtled forward like a gust of wind, his cloak fluttering loudly and his hood blown off, causing even his face to sting a bit. A windwalking talisman? This kid actually has middle-grade talismans. To be able to take out so many talismans for sale, he's indeed a fat sheep. The 3 chasing after Lu Changxing, upon seeing this, had their eyes brighten and also picked up their speed. In their eyes, Lu Changxing was now a fat sheep ready for slaughtering. Swish, swish, swish. After a swift dash by Lu Changxing, seeing that the 3 pursuers were not only not thrown off but were instead getting closer, his expression turned ugly. At this moment, there was no need to think to know that these 3 were after him, intent on killing and robbing. Moreover, even under the enhancement of a featherweight talisman and a windwalking talisman, he still couldn't shake off the 3 men. That indicated their cultivation levels were much higher than his. At least 6th level energy refinement, or even 7th level. Since I can't escape, then I'll have to fight. Knowing that running was no longer an option and would only waste his strength, a fierce and ruthless look appeared in Lu Changxing's eyes. Immediately, his arm, concealed under the black cloak, drew out a handful of talismans from his storage bag, numbering 10 to 20 sheets. At the same time, he gripped the golden light brick talisman treasure in his hand, all the while sprinting and constantly looking back at the 3 who were rapidly closing in on him. Fellow Daoist, please halt. Fellow Daoist, why rush so? I merely seek to get to know you better, to make a friend. Indeed, we just want to be friends with you. The 3 relentlessly pursued him, closing the distance, shouting as they chased. Wanting to be friends, are you? Making friends is what I love most. Hearing these words, Lu Changxing stopped in his tracks, his expression indifferent as he watched the 3 men drawing nearer. As the 3 entered the range for a spell attack in an instant, Lu Changxing activated all the talismans in his hand at once. Instantly, the talismans burst into light. Some talismans, under Lu Changxing's control of spiritual power, turned into faint golden glows, water screens, and entwining vines, enveloping his entire body. Most of the talismans, however, transformed into fist-sized fireballs, water orbs, arm-thick sharp arrows, and keen crescents. They all shot towards the 3 pursuers, whistling fiercely as they flew. Not good. Careful. This kid actually has so many talismans. The 3, noting Lu Changxing's move and use of so many talismans at once, were taken aback and somewhat caught off guard. They were all cultivators at the 6th or 7th level of Qi refinement, facing so many talisman attacks at once, they also found it somewhat difficult to parry. However, the 3 of them were also experienced in the ways of the world. Without some skill, they wouldn't dare to act as robber cultivators. One among them, a short and thin figure, also took out several talismans and activated them, casting spells quickly, with yellow light flickering in his hands. Earth wall technique. One could see that thick earthen walls rapidly rose from the ground, blocking the oncoming talisman assault. Boom boom boom. But under the fierce firepower of this group of talismans, the earthen walls were rapidly disintegrating. Just as the earthen walls were about to be completely disintegrated, one of the 3, a tall and thin figure, had already brought out a black shield. The shield rapidly grew in size as it left his hand, spinning in the air and emitting a dark, mysterious light, bearing the violent firepower of the talismans. The last of the three, a burly man clad in a yellow robe, brought out a flying dagger several inches long. The flying dagger transformed into a streak of white rainbow, flying straight towards Lu Changsheng's forehead. However, at the same time, they also felt a startling aura emanating from Lu Changsheng. One could see Lu Changsheng's black cloak fluttering without wind, rustling loudly, with golden light bursting forth from his hands. A golden, gleaming rectangular object appeared from his hands, shooting upward, quickly enlarging in the air, causing the oncoming flying dagger to slow down. And the startling aura, the mana, was coming from this very object. This kid is really loaded, not only with so many talismans but also such a treasure, jackpot. The short and thin man said with joy in his eyes upon seeing this. However, the burly man in the yellow robe, who had brought out the flying dagger, saw the rapidly enlarging gold brick and his pupils contracted, recognizing its origin. Talisman treasure. He hastily yelled out, his deep voice filled with fear. What? Talisman treasure? The other two, hearing this, were momentarily stunned. Staring at the object in the air that had now transformed into the size of a small house, like a mini mountain of golden light, their pupils immediately dilated and their faces showed panic. Without giving them time to think, the golden brick surrounded by spiritual energy radiated golden light in all directions, emitting a terrifying pressure. This pressure made the three feel as if they were carrying a great mountain on their backs, their bodies suddenly heavy, their spiritual power sluggish, unable to move. Danger. Great danger. At this moment, the three keenly felt a sense of death looming over them and shouted in unison, frantically begging for mercy. Fellow Daoist, let's talk this out. Fellow Daoist, spare my life, please. I was wrong, I was blind, big brother, I have an 80-year-old mother at home, a 3-year-old child, please put away your divine skills and spare me. At this moment, they felt it was preposterous. Absolutely preposterous to the extreme. As if preposterousness itself was opening the door for preposterousness, preposterousness had come home. A cultivator at the third-level energy refinement, coming to a small place like this to attend a trade conference, actually possessed a talisman treasure. This was completely absurd. If you have a talisman treasure at your side, why run? If you just showed the talisman treasure, would we even dare to chase you? We would turn around and leave, even apologize profusely. Who pulls out a talisman treasure at the drop of a hat? Isn't it wasteful to kill people like us with a talisman treasure? Do we deserve it? At this moment, the three didn't even know what to say. The pressure of the golden light brick rendered them speechless. The golden light brick, massive as a small mountain, slammed down heavily towards the three. Bang! A thunderous sound echoed, making the whole bullhead mountain seem to shake violently. Without daring to linger, for fear that the recent commotion might attract others, Lu Changsheng, fighting against nausea, jumped into the deep pit and fished out the 3 storage bags from the bloody mess. He used a cleansing technique to clean the storage bags of blood and flesh, then destroyed the remnants of the meaty muck with a flame bullet technique talisman. Picking up the damaged and deformed iron lump of a shield and the flying dagger artifact, he used a wind-commanding charm on himself, soaring out of the pit and quickly leaving the area. An hour later, having reverted to his original appearance, Lu Changsheng rode his horse away from Bullhead Mountain, over 100 miles away, and only stopped to rest and recover his spiritual power after making sure no one was following him. Huff. It's good that I didn't think about conserving and used the talisman treasure immediately after triggering the talismans. Otherwise, with just lower grade and middle grade talismans, it would have been impossible to kill those 3. The cultivation world really is fraught with danger. Despite being so cautious, I was still targeted. It seems I'll have to be even more careful in the future. Lu Changsheng found a grove to rest in, and thinking back to the earlier events, he felt a lingering fear and let out a long sigh of relief. The fact that he had been so cautious and yet still had been targeted made him even more aware of the dangers within the cultivation world. He felt as if the cultivation world was a stark place governed by the law of the jungle, where only the strong survive. Without strength, danger and accidents could come at any time. It seems that joining a faction and leaning on a strong backer is the way to go. Although living under the Lu family's roof means relying on others, at least there is some guarantee of safety. Lu Changxing mumbled to himself, also realizing the benefits of having a family power backing him. In a family or a sect, although contributions to the collective are expected, at least in the early stages one has others to fend off the elements and take the brunt for you. After meditating for a while, Lu Changxing couldn't help but shake his head. The spiritual energy was too sparse in this mundane world. It was far too slow to recover through meditation. He had no idea when it would be restored. He took out a spirit stone and began meditating to recover. Some time later, the once translucent spirit stone had become much more dull. Spirit stones were mostly used as currency, but they could also be used for cultivation, drawing the spiritual energy within to accelerate one's cultivation. But for most cultivators, directly using spirit stones for cultivation was too extravagant. It was more economical to buy spirit rice, spiritual tea, spiritual wine, and other such spirit food. After using a spirit stone, Lu Changxing's spiritual power had mostly recovered. He took out the storage bags he had taken from the three men and began to count his spoils. Thankfully, the three of them had storage bags, otherwise, this would have been a huge loss. I wonder what's in these storage bags. I hope it's enough to recoup my losses. The talisman he used earlier was worth 30 to 40 spirit stones alone. As for the consumption of the talisman treasure with one strike, Lu Changxing couldn't even estimate. But at the very least, it was worth over 100 spirit stones. If these three were broke, it would be a huge loss indeed. A moment later, Lu Changxing sorted out 103 spirit stones from the three storage bags. A flying sword magic artifact and a bell magic artifact. 3 bottles of fasting pills, 1 bottle of yellow dragon elixir, 1 bottle of pure spirit elixir, and 3 bottles of unrecognizable potions and containers. 15 lower grade primary level talismans, 6 middle grade primary level talismans, and 1 superior grade talisman. As well as various books and a number of miscellaneous things. This flying sword, bell, and flying dagger all seem to be lower grade magical instruments. They should each fetch around 50 spirit stones or so. Although this shield is a magic artifact, all of its prohibitions have been broken. It can only be sold as scrap. I wonder how much it's still worth. However, these 3 storage bags can be worth about 150 spirit stones. Plus all these miscellaneous things, the total should also be around 500 spirit stones. Having accounted for the belongings of the 3 men, Lu Changxing's mood improved considerably. He smacked his lips and sighed contentedly. Killing people and setting fires really tightens your belt with gold. No matter where, murder and looting is always the fastest way to make money. Thinking back to when he first arrived at the Lu family and became a live-in son-in-law, he only got 2 spirit stones per month. As a talisman master, he got barely 10 spirit stones a month. The 100 talismans he sold today were equivalent to a month's worth of making, but after deducting costs, he only made a little over 100 spirit stones. Nothing compares to the simplicity and speed of killing for treasure. However, Lu Changxing did not have the slightest interest in making a living through murder and plunder. Not to mention his moral principles prevented him from committing senseless killing. It was also too dangerous, which did not fit his style. With the system on his side, he didn't need to engage in such risky and treacherous acts. Marrying, taking concubines, and having children is the righteous path. Moreover, he was just a weak, 3rd-level chi refinement cultivator who had relied on talismans and a talisman treasure to win this battle. After organizing all the items, Lu Changxing took the foot-long flying sword magic artifact and attempted to wield it. A cultivator can wield a magic artifact through object manipulating technique after reaching the 3rd level of chi refinement. Back at the Lu family, because he was the first to have a child, he was rewarded with a flying sword. But before he had a chance to experience it, he had sold it for talisman making. Now with a flying sword in his hand, he couldn't resist the itch to try and play with it. Whoosh! Under Lu Changsheng's control, the flying sword immediately transformed into a streak of silver light and shot out. Ordinary magical instruments can be wielded with object manipulating technique without the need for consecration. A spiritual artifact used by a foundation-building great cultivator, which harbors its own spirit, must be consecrated and acknowledged by its owner before it can be controlled. There are also some high-end magic artifacts crafted by artifact refiners that require special object manipulating techniques to wield. But those kind of magic artifacts are quite high-end, and this flying sword obviously does not fall into that category. Under Lu Changsheng's manipulation, the flying sword, like a silver dragon, exhaled sword qi, slicing through the surrounding trees as effortlessly as cutting tofu. Then, with a plop, it easily pierced through a large rock, turned into a streak of silver light, and returned to Lu Changsheng's side. No wonder it's a magic artifact. It's no less powerful than primary-level spells, but it consumes much less spiritual power. If two cultivators were dueling, the difference between having a magic artifact and not having one is like heaven and earth. Having briefly experienced using the flying sword, Lu Changsheng showed delight and exclaimed in admiration. If he were to use spells like the flame bullet technique, he could use it 4 or 5 times before running out of spiritual power. But by wielding the flying sword, he estimated he could control it for a full 15 minutes, allowing for multiple attacks. Due to his limited spiritual power, Lu Changsheng didn't try the other magic artifacts. He put away the flying sword and mounted his horse to head towards the Crimson Whale gang. He planned to meet up with Li Feiyu and then arrange to secure his family home before returning to Jianghu Mountain early. The outside world was still too dangerous. It was better to hunker down at the Lu family to boost his power and focus on having more children. That was the real way to power. Chapter 31, Crimson Whale Gang. _1 The Crimson Whale Gang is located in Heavenly Water Mansion under Rui Prefecture. The Dejing River of Heavenly Water Mansion runs through the entire Rui Prefecture, right next to the Huaizu Canal of Qing Province. And the Crimson Whale Gang grew strong by engaging in the water transportation business. Not only are they famous in Jianghu, but they also possess an official background. One day, a youth in a green robe with clear and handsome features and a tall, slender figure, arrived at the city of Heavenly Water Mansion. He was leading a tall horse and cradling a small creature with dark fur and a scarlet vertical scar on its brow that resembled a wolf or dog. As he walked, he carried an air of casual confidence. At the city gate, several robust men donning short red tunics saw the youth and immediately perked up, quickly approaching and saying, "Could you be Master Lu Changsheng? Our young master has ordered us to wait here respectfully for Master Lu." 3 men stepped forward and spoke reverently. "Oh. Is your young master Li Feiyu?" This youth was none other than Lu Changsheng, who had come to find Li Feiyu at the Crimson Whale Gang. Seeing the Crimson Whale Gang embroidery on the men's clothing, he immediately guessed Li Feiyu had sent them to meet him. "Indeed, our young master is Li Feiyu," one of them responded. At that moment, somebody led a luxurious carriage over and invited Lu Changsheng to get inside. Seeing this, Lu Changsheng nodded slightly, handed the reins he was holding to someone nearby, and, while still holding the 9 Netherhound in his arms, got into the carriage. "Master Lu, please make yourself comfortable. It will take half an hour to reach the Crimson Whale Gang's main hall from here," the coachman said into the interior. Lu Changsheng responded. Immediately after, the carriage started moving steadily at a gentle pace. About half an hour later, the carriage stopped, and a voice called out, "Master Lu, we've arrived at the Crimson Whale Gang." Lu Changsheng lifted the curtain, stepped out of the carriage, and saw a large river in front of him. On the river surface was a tremendous ship, oval like a whale and bright crimson, lying quietly on the water. Above the river, under the clear blue sky washed clean, sunlight shone down and fell on the top of the huge ship, upon a red flag. The flag bore 2 blood-red characters, Crimson Whale. Is this the Crimson Whale Gang's main hall? It was Lu Changsheng's first time seeing such a majestic ship, even larger than the aircraft carriers he had seen in his previous life. On the ship's deck stood a 9-level towering pavilion, and around it were thick iron chains as big as water buckets, stretched across the river's edge, anchoring the ship in place. That's correct, this is our Crimson Whale gang's main hall, the Crimson Whale. Master Lu, please. The man beside him spoke and then led Lu Changxing toward the huge ship. Along the walkway connecting the ship and the dock, gang members kept watch and were on guard. However, before they had taken many steps, informed of Lu Changxing's arrival, Li Feiyu himself came out to meet him. Accompanying him was a man in his 40s, tall and in a red uniform, with a dignified countenance. Seeing this, the gang members guarding both sides of the road bowed in respect. Greetings to the gang leader. Greetings to the gang leader. Greetings to the gang leader. Changxing, Li Feiyu called out as he quickly approached Lu Changxing. He was somewhat surprised to see the wolf-dog-like creature in his arms. He didn't know where Lu Changxing had acquired a demon beast cub. Without inquiring further, he gestured to the imposing middle-aged man beside him and introduced him. Changxing, this is my father. He came out to meet you after hearing of your arrival. Father, this is my good friend Lu Changxing, Li Feiyu introduced them to each other. When he returned home, his father, instead of being angry that he had become a son-in-law to a cultivation family, fully supported his decision. For a martial artist of Jianghu, becoming a cultivator is to be above others. So what if he is a son-in-law? Only a true man can stoop and stretch with ease. Upon hearing Li Feiyu say that a fellow cultivator and friend was coming for a visit, he came out to welcome Li together. Because in the secular world, the status of a cultivator is extraordinary. Even if of the lowest tier, one is still a cultivator. I pay my respects to Uncle Li, Lu Changxing said to the distinguished man before him, his eyes shining with a bright gleam, a hint of a smile appearing on his face as he clasped his hands in greeting. Then he took out 5 bottles of elixir medicines from his bosom and said, I've prepared no proper gift, just a little token. Please accept this, Uncle Li. Lu my friend, you are too courteous. You shouldn't bring gifts when coming as a guest, Li Tianyang replied. I've already arranged a banquet inside. Please, come in, he added without refusing the gift, his voice deep and resonant, with a touch of magnetism. He was very polite and showed none of the airs typical of a gang leader, instead making a welcoming gesture and leading the way. Is this a demon beast? Where did you get this one? Li Feiyu finally turned his attention to the small creature in Lu Changxing's arms and asked quietly. I saw it at a loose cultivator gathering, thought it was quite good, so I decided to buy it to guard the house. Later on, it can also keep the children company, Lu Changxing casually fabricated. Guard the house, keep company, Li Feiyu heard Lu Changxing's straightforward words and was somewhat speechless. Living in the Lu family, did they still need a dog to guard the house? And who would buy a demon beast for a child to play with? Weren't they afraid of the child getting hurt? He continued to speak, if there is no beast taming method, won't such a young demon beast grow up to be fierce and difficult to train? Having lived in the Lu family for 3 years, he naturally knew quite a bit about cultivation information. A young demon beast was nothing like the domesticated pets that were gentle. The seller said this one is just an ordinary canine demon beast, fairly mild in temperament, not much different from the usual household cats and dogs, and will obey after being raised for some time. Lu Changxing continued to spout nonsense. This 9 netherhound was obtained by him through a system lottery, so naturally, there was no such thing as it being fierce or difficult to train. As a pet, it held 100% absolute loyalty to him, its master, and there was no need for any beast taming method, constraints, or tactics to control it. That's good, Li Feiyu said, hearing the words without asking further. He could only tell that the 9 netherhound was a canine demon beast, but could not discern what type of demon beast it was or its rank. Moreover, being just a cub, it did not exhibit any wild ferocity. The group entered the Crimson Whale, where a banquet had already been prepared. After eating, Lu Changxing went to rest. Coming all the way from Bullhead Mountain, he hadn't really rested and was somewhat tired and weary. After all, he was just a cultivator on the 3rd level of qi refinement. He had plenty of energy, but it was limited. After the banquet concluded, Li Jingyang remembered the gifts Lu Changxing had given him and took them out to inspect. Looking at the elixir medicines in the bottle, his eyes suddenly dilated with surprise. Then, he carefully poured the elixir medicines into his hand, examined them closely, and sniffed them, exclaiming in shock. This bottle contains marrow cleansing elixirs, which can assist one in cleansing the marrow and improving martial arts aptitude. This bottle is innate elixir, which can increase the chances of breaking through to the innate realm. This bottle is great restoration elixir, capable of healing any internal or external injuries. This bottle is essence nurturing elixir, which can improve one's strength by several decades. This bottle is 5 spirit detoxification elixir, which can neutralize thousands of fierce poisons in the world. This, Li Zhengyang's commanding visage was filled with shock as he looked at the 5 bottles of elixirs in his hand. As the leader of the Crimson Whale gang and a figure who dominated a mansion, he had broad knowledge. He recognized all 5 elixirs at a glance. They were saintly medicines in the martial world of Jianghu. Not to mention causing a bloodbath, but each one was coveted by countless people in Jianghu, worth sacrificing life for. Yet now, Lu Changxing had casually brought out 5 bottles to give to him as a meeting gift. How could he not be astonished? "Father, what's the matter?" Li Feiyu, who was not far, saw his father in such a state and approached to inquire. "This is what your friend gave." Li Jingyang took a deep breath and showed the elixirs to his son. "These are marrow cleansing elixirs, innate elixir, great restoration elixir, essence nurturing elixir, 5 spirit detoxification elixir." Li Feiyu's eyes narrowed slightly as he also recognized these 5 types of elixirs. As a martial artist and also a cultivator, he not only recognized these 5 elixirs, but also knew that many precious elixirs in the secular world were basic elixirs of non-entry grade refined by cultivators. However, for cultivators, they were basic and non-entry level elixirs. In the secular world, to the martial artists, they were incomparably precious, miracle medicines. "Yes, your friend is indeed very generous," Li Jingyang nodded and said with emotion. He had only heard a brief introduction about Lu Changxing from Li Feiyu previously. All he knew was that, like his own son, Lu Changxing was a cultivator. He came over to ask the Crimson Whale gang to help take care of his secular family, but he didn't know much else. Now, seeing the 5 bottles of elixirs and recalling Lu Changxing's composed and self-confident demeanor, he felt that Lu Changxing was no ordinary cultivator and could be considered remarkable compared to the general cultivators. "I have seen many people over the years. Your friend is not simple. You should build a deep friendship with him," Li Jingyang said seriously. "As for these elixirs, they're too precious. You should return them later." Li Jingyang put away the elixirs and handed them to his son. He was indeed tempted by the elixirs, but felt they were too precious to accept comfortably. After all, they were gifts given out of the friendship with his son, and such gifts should be returned by his son someday. "Father, I have a good relationship with Changxing, so please accept them with peace of mind," Li Feiyu said, knowing that Lu Changxing wouldn't take the gifts back. "If you feel it's not right to accept them, you can compensate Changxing's parents and family later on." Feeling a bit ashamed for not bringing anything good home, he was reminded of how he lived frugally in the Lu family with only 2 spirit stones a month and no spare spirit stones to spend. "You can rest assured regarding Lu Changxing," Li Feiyu continued. "As long as the Crimson Whale gang exists, it will ensure his parents and family wealth and safety without a care. Even if the Crimson Whale gang no longer exists, we will do our utmost to protect his parents and family," Li Jingyang declared with a deep and resolute voice. Even if a common cultivator asked him to take care of a family, he would comply. Because this was a chance for encountering immortals. To be able to owe a favor to a cultivator. Moreover, Lu Changxing seemed out of the ordinary and was a friend of his son. Chapter 32, Going Home, Return Journey. _1 Having stayed at the Crimson Whale gang for 2 days, Lu Changxing set out to return to his hometown. Li Feiyu had taken 2 people to accompany him on his journey. Since Lu Changxing planned to settle his family well, he would go directly to Rui Prefecture and then return to Qingzhou Mountain. Li Feiyu naturally went back with him. The two people were brought along for the convenience of settling Lu Changsheng's family later on. I wonder how my parents have been during the 3 years of my absence. As he set foot on the road home, Lu Changsheng couldn't help but feel sentimental and apprehensive as he drew closer to his village. After all, it was the home where he had lived for 18 years. Even after awakening the memories of his previous life, those first 18 years were still a part of his life. 6 days later. A carriage traveling on a bumpy, dirt road arrived at a small mountain village. At the entrance to the village stood a stone pier, engraved with the 3 characters for Wuxia Village. Lu Changsheng, seeing the landscape familiar from his memories, had the carriage stop outside the village and quickly walked into it alone. There wasn't anyone to be seen at the village entrance, but from afar came the sound of cheerful music. Lu Changsheng guessed that some family was celebrating an occasion, drawing the villagers to join the festivity for a feast. He walked towards his own house. Hearing the music grow louder, he quickened his pace. He soon saw a tiled 2-courtyard house fenced with hedges ahead. The surroundings of the house were adorned with large Shi characters, and tables were arranged both inside and outside the courtyard, where many villagers were chatting, standing, squatting, or sitting. Some people were playing gongs, drums, and trumpets, and many children frolicked around, creating a joyful atmosphere. Could it be that my younger brother is getting married? Lu Changsheng felt a slight surreal sensation as he looked at the familiar courtyard he had lived in for 18 years. He was the 3rd child in the family, with an older sister and brother above him, and a younger sister and brother below him. His brother, 5 years his junior, was now 16 and of marrying age. "Young master, who are you looking for?" At that moment, a woman with somewhat coarse and dark skin, carrying a child, noticed Lu Changsheng approaching and came over to inquire. Gazing at the woman before him, a surge of emotion welled up in Lu Changsheng. After a moment of silence, he answered with a somewhat hoarse voice, "Sis, Im Changsheng." The woman in front of him was in fact Lu Changsheng's eldest sister. "Changsheng?" Upon hearing this, the woman looked incredulously at the noble-looking young man before her. Then, closely examining the face resembling that of her brother who had left home 3 years ago without any news, her eyes became moist, and her voice choked up as she exclaimed, "Changsheng, you are Changsheng. Where have you been, Changsheng? You've not returned for 3 years. Do you know how worried our parents have been? It's good that you're back, it's good. Ah Lung, this is your uncle, your second uncle." The woman with the cloth sleeves wiped the moisture from her eyes and excitedly spoke to the toddler, who was only 2 or 3 years old, in her arms. Then, about to reach for Lu Changsheng to take him inside, she hesitated as if fearing she might soil his clothes and withdrew her extended hand. She said to Lu Changsheng, "Today happens to be the happy day of Changqing's wedding, I'll go tell Dad and Mom." With that, she walked briskly into the courtyard, holding her child, and shouted loudly, "Dad, Mom, Changsheng has come back." "Changsheng? Who's that?" "The 3rd son of old man Lu, the one who disappeared suddenly 3 years ago. I always thought that child was odd from a young age. How did he just come back after 3 years? He looks nothing like he used to. Indeed, he's got such fine skin and looks even more refined than those young masters from the city." Other villagers, hearing the commotion, also turned their attention towards Lu Changsheng at the entrance and started to murmur among themselves. Soon, the woman returned with 2 elderly people with gray hair and faces weathered by the years, dressed neatly, walking out of the house towards Lu Changsheng standing in the courtyard. Lu Changsheng also fixed his gaze on the 2 elderly people. In 3 years, the degree of aging in his parents had exceeded his expectations. His lips parted slightly, trembling as he called out, "Dad, Mom." That day, something sensational happened in Wuxia Village that astounded everyone. The Lu family's 3rd son, who had vanished for 3 years, returned home. Normally, this sort of event wouldn't concern the other villagers much and would be nothing more than small talk over tea or dinner. However, once this 3rd son of the Lu family got home, he threw a wedding celebration for his younger brother with over 100 tables of banquet that lasted for half a month. He also built large houses for his own siblings and his father's family and purchased lands for them. As a result, the old man Lu went from a commoner to being addressed respectfully as Lu Yuanwei. Even the villagers of Wonia received a handsome share of the wedding joy money. This incident would surely be the talk of Wonia village for decades. Yet Lu Changxing, the man who had become the talk of the town, stayed at his parents' house for just one day before leaving Wonia village with Li Feiyu, returning to Rui County City. Why leave so soon, without staying a while? On the official road, Li Feiyu looked towards Lu Changxing beside him and asked aloud. There's nothing left to stay for, they are all well, and their future lives will be worry-free, which puts my mind at ease. Lu Changxing shook his head, looking at the blue sky and spoke softly. 3 years apart, and I embarked on a path entirely different from normal people. Now back at home, the way my parents and family look at me carries a mix of unfamiliarity and awe. Thus, after ensuring that my parents and family were well settled, I left straightaway without much hesitation. 9 days later. Rui County City. Outside the city gates. Brother Hong, no need to see us off any further, the mountains are high and the rivers long, we shall meet again, we shall meet again. Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu, leading their spirit horses, bid farewell to Hong Yi with a clasped hand salute. We shall meet again. I wish both fellow Daoists a prosperous and evergreen path in cultivation. Hong Yi returned the gesture with a salute. He looked more spirited than before. A few days ago, he showed his father, the Marquis of Rui, the 13 talismans given to him by Lu Changxing. He indicated that his friend had become a talisman master, and henceforth, stable trade of talismans with the Marquis mansion could be established. Upon hearing this, and seeing that Hong Yi had received the talismans without having paid any spirit stones, his father believed in Hong Yi's words. He praised him greatly, encouraging him to foster a good relationship with Lu Changxing and even assigning him some responsibilities within the Marquis mansion. Hong Yi was overjoyed by this, and his whole demeanor grew more buoyant and confident. Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu also returned the salute and then mounted their spirit horses to set off. After traveling a distance, Li Feiyu spoke up, I see that Hong Yi seems to have warmed up a lot to you. Although Hong Yi is born to the Marquis, he is just a son of a concubine, and his life cannot be said to have been easy. Making friends with me as a talisman master may well improve his position in the household. Lu Changxing naturally knew the reason. On this trip home to fetch the spirit horses, Hong Yi had brought 15 spirit stones as payment for the previous talismans. And expressed that because of this, he had received praise from his father, the Marquis of Rui. He hoped that if Lu Changxing ever planned to sell talismans to outsiders in the future, he would consider him as a priority. Naturally, Lu Changxing nodded and agreed to this proposal. He also felt that it would be worth considering to sell some talismans through Hong Yi as a channel. Otherwise, with so many talismans on hand and lacking strength, it would be troublesome to sell them. True, it's very difficult to make money and cultivate in the secular world, Li Feiyu lamented as well. After chatting casually for a while, the two took to the official road once again and hastened on their journey. Chapter 33, Rainy Night in the Ruined Temple, the Old Man and the Young Girl. _1/2 a month later. Boom! A thunderclap resounded abruptly over the parched land. Looks like it's going to rain. On the Imperial Road, Lu Changxing, mounted on a spiritual horse, looked up at the dark, overcast sky and spoke. It's getting late, and there happens to be a temple ahead. Let's rest there for the night, Li Feiyu said, gazing at the darkening sky. A mountain, a dilapidated temple, heavy rain. This isn't going to lead to any accidents, is it? Lu Changxing also noticed an abandoned ancient temple ahead and couldn't help but mutter to himself. But the weather was not suitable for spending the night outdoors. The two rode their spiritual horses quickly to the old temple. This ancient temple was very run down, with overgrown weeds everywhere, and filled with dust and spider webs. Lu Changxing cast a cleansing technique, cleaned up a bit, then gathered some firewood and started a campfire. Afterward, he took out some raw meat from his storage bag and began feeding the 9 netherhound. You little things certainly have quite the appetite, Li Feiyu said, watching the 9 netherhound devour the meat. Yeah, I don't know how its stomach can hold all that, Lu Changxing said. Although the 9 netherhound was a pup, it had a huge appetite, needing 5 to 6 pounds of raw meat in one meal. Ordinary raw meat was fine, even if it ate 100 pounds a day, they could afford it. But Lu Changxing felt that to make the 9 netherhound grow faster, he probably needed to feed it demon beast meat. And demon beast meat was expensive. The cheapest demon beast meat sold by the Lu family cost 1 spirit stone for 5 or 6 pounds. This made Lu Changxing feel that if he wanted to raise the 9 netherhound to 4th rank, it would likely cost a significant amount of money and resources. The 9 netherhound, still a pup, would fall asleep after eating its fill, so Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu started to meditate and rest. The night grew deeper, and a heavy downpour began outside. Just then, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Both Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu, who were meditating, opened their eyes at the same time. The door of the decrepit temple creaked open as an old man and a young girl walked in. The elder was slender, dressed in a black cloth shirt, carrying a gray bundle on his back. Upon seeing Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu inside the temple, his gaze slightly hardened, then he bowed his hands in greeting. This old man and my granddaughter were passing by and seek shelter from the rain. Sorry for disturbing the 2 young brothers. This broken temple isn't mine, please make yourself at home, Lu Changxing said to the elder, then turned his attention to the young girl in pink beside him. The girl appeared to be 16 or 17 years old. Decked in a long pink misty dress, her looks weren't stunning, but she was still quite beautiful. Her delicate face was fair and youthful, still carrying a hint of baby fat, pure and lovely. Because of the heavy rain, her pink dress was soaked through, clinging to her young and tender body, revealing the outline of her slender legs beneath the dress. Her black hair was slightly disheveled, plastered against her cheeks, making her look frail and pitiful, yet with an allure of youthful temptation. What was surprising, though, was that the girl was thoroughly drenched, while the old man's clothes seemed hardly wet from the rain outside. The elder smiled and bowed his hands in thanks, then sat down with the girl to one side. This old man must be an innate master, right? Lu Changxing withdrew his gaze and used the sound-transmitting technique to communicate with Li Feiyu. He could tell at a glance that the elder was a martial artist. And being able to stay dry in the pouring rain clearly indicated exceptional martial prowess, so he guessed the old man was an innate master. Indeed, a feather cannot be added, and insects cannot fall. This is the work of an innate master, Li Feiyu transmitted his voice back. He naturally knew a few primary level spells used by cultivators and was even more proficient at them than Lu Changxing. However, this elder and the girl are clearly not grandfather and granddaughter. Li Feiyu continued. Oh. How did you figure that out? Lu Changxing asked. He also felt that the 2 didn't seem like grandfather and granddaughter. Because there was no affection typical of that relationship. But he didn't know why Li Feiyu was so sure and wanted to hear what this old hand in Jianghu had to say. Their actions and posture do not resemble those of grandfather and granddaughter. What kind of grandfather would watch his granddaughter get drenched like this? Moreover, the elder is an innate master, yet the granddaughter shows no signs of martial arts training, which is also unreasonable. However, these can all be barely explained away. The main thing is, this girl's acupoint had been sealed, rendering her unable to speak. And when she came in, the moment she saw us, her eyes lit up with hope, as if she was trying to ask for help. Li Feiyu explained in detail to Lu Changxing. Not bad, the experience from wandering Jianghu really is different. In that case, do you want to play the hero and save the beauty? Lu Changxing said, admiringly. He hadn't expected Li Feiyu to notice so much in such a short period of time. With his 3rd level Qi refinement cultivation, he had only noticed that the elder was an innate master and that the 2 didn't look like grandfather and granddaughter, but hadn't paid attention to so many details. I grew up in the Crimson Whale gang and started wandering the Jianghu at the age of 12, I still have this discernment. As for playing hero, there's no rush, let's see how things unfold first. With a trace of smugness, Li Feiyu said. While the two communicated through the sound-transmitting technique, the elder took out some dry food from his bag and said naturally and skillfully, "May the two young brothers lend me some fire to roast my dry food? Moreover, my granddaughter is now drenched, and it would be easy for her to catch a cold if we don't light a fire," the elder added. As he spoke, the old man walked toward Lu Changsheng and Li Feiyu. Seeing the elder coming over, Lu Changsheng immediately narrowed his eyes, feeling a stir of vigilance, and placed his hand inside his robes, holding a stack of talismans. He clearly remembered Li Feiyu telling him that the strength of an innate martial artist was not inferior to that of a third-level qi refinement cultivator. If they got in close, the odds of an innate martial artist winning were even higher. Given the elder's unknown origins and Li Feiyu's previous words, suspiciousness was evident. In such a situation, he naturally became more cautious and was ready to take action at any sign of an unusual move. "Please, help yourself." At that moment, Li Feiyu spoke up. At the same time, he sent a message to Lu Changsheng, "Leave it to me." Lu Changsheng didn't reply but kept holding the talismans, staying alert. The elder reached the campfire and handed over the dry food. "You two young brothers haven't eaten yet, have you? Would you like some?" Growl. Just then, the nine netherhound lying next to Lu Changsheng sleeping suddenly woke up and growled at the elder. Lu Changsheng, without changing expression, calmed the nine netherhound, ready to act at any moment. "We have already eaten." Li Feiyu, with a slight smile on his face, looked at the elder and said, "Then I'll just take a stick to start the fire." The elder seemed to pay no heed to the growls of the nine netherhound, bending down to pick up a stick of wood from the fire pit. And at that moment, Li Feiyu, with a mocking smile, said to the elder, "I'm afraid that fire won't be enough. Shall I add some more?" Before his words had finished, Li Feiyu, who was sitting, suddenly swung his robe and struck a fierce palm towards the elder, the force of which whipped up a strong wind. Facing this sudden strike, the elder seemed ready, swiftly raising his hand to meet the blow. However, at that instant, a thumb-sized flame appeared in the palm of Li Feiyu's hand. Bang! Ah! As their palms met, the elder let out a piercing scream, and his hand burst into flames. The fire quickly spread from his arm across his entire body at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning him into ashes. Chapter 34, Love at First Sight. _1 Lu Changsheng was quite astonished to see Li Feiyu strike in an instant, directly reducing the elder to ash with a single palm. He was surprised not only at the decisiveness of Li Feiyu's action, but also at Li Feiyu's combat capabilities and techniques. Compressing the flame bullet technique in the palm, combined with his innate martial arts, a single palm strike was launched, and without waiting for the force to explode, the high temperature of the flame bullet in the palm melted and burned the person, truly impossible to guard against. I didn't really want to meddle, but he was asking for his own death. Li Feiyu snorted coldly, then laughed and said, "However, the effect of combining this spell with martial arts is indeed not bad." After killing the man, he appeared very indifferent, as if nothing had happened. He then turned to Lu Changsheng and said, "I was indeed not wrong before. This old fellow was no good person, actually harboring malicious intentions towards us." He was somewhat cautious, but his methods were too poor. He couldn't even use poison properly. Li Feiyu said so. Poison? Upon hearing this, Lu Changsheng was stunned and somewhat incredulous. He had thought that Li Feiyu saw something wrong with the elder and decided to make a preemptive strike. It hadn't occurred to him that Li Feiyu would say the elder used poison. That's right, the dry food he brought probably had poison in it. When he came over, he had also hidden a kind of narcotic poison in his sleeve, intending to poison us stealthily when he bent over to make the fire. He hid it quite well, but the execution was not very clever. Little did he know that I have been familiar with such things from a young age. Li Feiyu spoke, explaining to Lu Changsheng. It seems that not only is the cultivation world dangerous, but the secular martial world is no better, with methods that are difficult to guard against. Lu Changsheng fell silent for a moment and shook his head reflectively. He felt he was somewhat naive in front of Li Feiyu. Like an old game player and a newbie. Just now, he felt that there was something off about the elder and became slightly vigilant, but he had not detected the act of stealthy poisoning. It seemed that the Nine Netherhound had just awoken from its sleep and barked fiercely, probably having sensed something as well. No wonder it was a heaven-rank demon beast with a trace of true spirit bloodline. Even as a cub that slept all day, it had a keen sense for danger. At that moment, Lu Changxing made up his mind. In the future, faced with such situations, he would either strike decisively first or keep his distance. Otherwise, with his limited experience and temperament, he would be no match for these seasoned figures of the martial world and would inevitably find himself in trouble sooner or later. Such is the way of the world, the same everywhere. Moreover, when you are in the martial world, you need to be particularly wary of Daoists, monks, the elderly, women, and children. Li Feiyu said. The elderly, women, and children? Does that mean only people like us don't need to be so cautious? Lu Changxing asked. No, everyone must be cautious, but these types, in particular, require extra caution. If you encounter a mix of these together, you need to be even more vigilant. Li Feiyu smiled and said. As the two of them were talking, the delicate girl dressed in a pink skirt also came back to her senses. She had just witnessed Li Feiyu burn the elder to ashes with a palm strike, and she was so shocked that she had become completely stunned. Now, as she regained her composure, she immediately came to kneel in front of Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu. Her innocent and pitiful face seemed to want to say something, but no sound could be heard. Does she have any issues? With the recent events in mind, Lu Changxing looked at the approaching girl and asked Li Feiyu. In his eyes, the girl was just an ordinary person and naturally unproblematic. But Li Feiyu's words about being wary of the elderly, women, had made him feel less confident. She has no issues, she's just a normal person. It seems that she was likely kidnapped by that old man. Seeing Lu Changxing's expression, Li Feiyu chuckled and then flicked his finger, as several streams of qi flew out, striking the girl. The girl kneeling before them let out a muffled grunt and found that she could speak again. It seemed as if I were waking from a dream, a flush of excitement coloring my face, wanting to speak. But the sadness that had been suppressed to the extreme, at that moment, made her burst into tears. At first, it was a high-pitched, fine wailing. Then the crying grew louder and louder, sob after sob, releasing all the sadness, fear, and anxiety she had been holding inside. Upon seeing this, Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu exchanged glances without a word. Then Li Feiyu simply looked up, staring seriously at the beam above him. Clearly not too keen on meddling, he was essentially leaving it up to Lu Changxing to handle. When the girl's crying softened a little, Lu Changxing spoke with a gentle tone, "All right, it's all right now." Hearing this, the girl lifted her face, which was as pitiable as it was charming, streaked with tears, and bowed deeply. "My name is Chu Zhenjin, I am indebted to you two young heroes for saving my life." In her speech, a pair of bright, teary eyes welled up with tears, which slid down from the corners. "Miss, don't worry, take this money, and tomorrow we'll be on our way to the nearby town. You can then find someone to send you home." Realizing that the girl before them was just an ordinary, pitiable person, Lu Changxing sighed, helped her to her feet, and handed her a silver ingot. Previously, in Rui County City, he had bought himself a human skin mask and a cloak, as well as some gifts for his wives and children, using some gold and silver he had exchanged with Hong Yi. Wu, no sooner had he spoken than the girl began to cry again, her voice breaking. "My parents are dead, they were killed by someone." Wu, hearing this, Lu Changxing's mouth twitched, suddenly feeling a headache coming on. He looked towards Li Feiyu. However, Li Feiyu was still looking intently at the beam above him. Lu Changxing sighed and asked, "Do you have any other relatives?" "No more, my parents are dead." "Wu, that villain said I have a spiritual root and wanted to offer me as a consort to an immortal. My parents wouldn't agree, so he killed my whole family." "Wu," the girl cried continuously, her whole demeanor pitiable and helpless. However, upon hearing this, Lu Changxing was slightly taken aback. Spiritual root. He immediately used the spiritual eye technique, his eyes shimmering with crystalline light as he gazed upon Chu Zhenjin. On the girl's body, there was a faint halo of spiritual light. This showed that she indeed possessed a spiritual root. However, his mastery of the spiritual eye technique was only at the beginner level, and he could only tell whether there was a spiritual root or not the quality of it. Li Feiyu also looked towards the girl, somewhat surprised. He had not expected the girl they had casually saved to actually possess a spiritual root. This revelation made the two of them understand why the old man, an innate master, had been with such a girl. Seeing the girl with tears rolling down her pitiful face, Lu Changsheng's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, "Miss, what are your plans for the future?" I don't know." Chu Zhenjin sobbed gently, her face a picture of bewilderment as she spoke. "So, you mean to say you're now homeless and unsure of what to do next?" Lu Changxing continued to inquire. The girl looked lost and sad as she nodded and then began to cry once more. "It so happens that I have taken a fancy to you at first sight. Would you be willing to marry me, accompany me home, and spend the rest of our lives together?" Lu Changxing spoke up. Since the girl had lost her parents and had no home of her own, and also possessed a spiritual root, why not take her as a wife and bring her home to bear children? He had always been thinking about marrying a few fairies with spiritual roots to bear children. Now, an attractive girl of marriageable age, with a spiritual root and no parents or home, presented herself before him. Why should he hesitate or pretend to be a morally upright gentleman? It was only natural to take the initiative, express his feelings, and offer her a warm home. However, he was not coercive, it all depended on the girl's willingness. If she was unwilling, then that would be the end of it. He wouldn't insist. After all, she could potentially be the mother of his future children. His moral compass was not so skewed as to force someone to bear his children. Chapter 35, Return to Jianghu Mountain. _1 At this moment outside the broken temple, the rain was torrential. Inside the broken temple, Li Feiyu, who was about to see how Lu Changxing would deal with Chu Zhenjin, heard these words and was completely stunned. He looked at Lu Changxing with a face full of astonishment. He hadn't expected Lu Changxing to suddenly say something so shameless. Love at first sight? To spend the rest of one's life together? Is this what you call love at first sight? You're clearly lusting after her body, after her spiritual root. However, he naturally wouldn't sabotage his good brother's efforts. And he knew that his good brother had no great ambitions in this lifetime. He just wanted to live a stable life, be surrounded by wives and concubines, and have a house full of children, especially a few with spiritual roots. The girl in front of them had a decent appearance, possessed a spiritual root, and had no place to call home, unsure of where to settle down. So, when Lu Changxing made such a proposal, it wasn't really a problem and was quite reasonable. After all, the children born of a woman with a spiritual root were much more likely to inherit a spiritual root themselves. In his eyes, even though Lu Changxing, a talisman master, might find it difficult to look for a few fairies with spiritual roots to father children with. Because pregnancy and childbirth greatly affect a female cultivator's cultivation. Thus, many female cultivators, even if they were willing to take a partner, were not too keen on having children. Upon hearing Lu Changsheng's words, Chu Zhenjin also paused in surprise, not quite able to react. Her eyes, wet with tears, stared blankly at the man in front of her, who had a clear and handsome face and a tall and lean stature. The next moment, her slightly chubby and fair cheeks flushed red at once. This young man's words are just too blunt. Although many dramatic stories say that one can only repay a life-saving debt by pledging one's body, this was just too direct. She didn't even know his name yet. And shouldn't this type of proposal come from her instead? In an instant, Chu Zhenjin felt dizzy and somewhat dumbfounded. Meeting Lu Changsheng's gentle gaze, Chu Zhenjin couldn't help her heart fluttering and hastily lowered her head in embarrassment. There's no rush. You can think it over carefully and give me an answer before dawn, Lu Changxing said calmly, seeing the girl's shy demeanor. Speaking of which, he took out a garment purification talisman and activated it on the girl. He dried her damp, pink dress and cleaned it thoroughly. It was, of course, a small bit of cunning. To show off a bit of his own magic. Although he had moral boundaries and wouldn't force anyone into anything, his standards weren't that high and could be flexible. Moreover, in Lu Changsheng's view, trying to attract a young woman by showing off oneself was quite normal and didn't amount to any moral turpitude. Are you immortals? Witnessing Lu Changxing pull out a talisman and with a gust of wind clean her clothes, Chu Zhenqian's face filled with surprise. She also recalled how Li Feiyu had turned the old man into ash with a palm strike, which she had initially thought was some martial skill and hadn't given it much thought. But now, it seemed to be clearly the work of an immortal. Under the girl's astonished gaze, Lu Changxing smiled slightly and spoke warmly. We are cultivators, the immortals you often hear about. Cultivators? Chu Zhenqian's bright eyes showed a trace of confusion when she heard this. Indeed, as long as one possesses a spiritual root, they can embark on cultivation and become a cultivator. That old man wanted to offer you as a concubine to a cultivator because you have a spiritual root, Lu Changxing nodded and explained. So it was I who caused my parents' suffering. Upon hearing this, the girl burst into tears once more. After crying for a while, Chu Zhenqian lifted her head, her eyes red and streaked with tears, and looked at Lu Changxing before saying, Your great kindness, Zhenqian cannot repay. I am willing to offer myself and marry you, my benefactor. Li Feiyu stood by quietly, watching Lu Changxing deceive the young girl. Are you sure you've thought this through? When Lu Changxing heard her words, he raised an eyebrow. He reckoned that Chu Zhenqian's consent also took into account his identity as a cultivator, perhaps hoping that he would help her seek revenge or something. However, a cultivator who would stoop to abducting for secular affairs probably wasn't too formidable. If Chu Zhenqian were to become the mother of his child, then once his cultivation level increased in the future, he would be willing to help her seek revenge. I have made up my mind. Chu Zhenqian pursed her pink lips, mustered her courage, and looked at Lu Changxing as she spoke. But after holding his gaze for a while, her delicate little face involuntarily blushed, spreading all the way to her earlobes. After looking into the tear-stained reddened eyes of the girl for a moment, Lu Changxing nodded and said, Fine, if that's the case, then you shall return with me tomorrow. Oh, by the way, my name is Lu Changxing. Straightaway, Lu Changxing took out a spiritual contract as a marriage vow and established a marriage agreement with Chu Zhenqian. It was something he had obtained from the storage bag of the 3 robber cultivators from Bullhead Mountain. It served a simple contractual effect. If one were to violate it, they would suffer a certain backlash, which could lead to the emergence of heart demons during their future cultivation. Honestly, its effect was present but not significant, considered better than nothing. Afterward, Lu Changxing briefly shared some details about himself and some common knowledge about cultivation with Chu Zhenqian. In the process, he also inquired how the old man knew that Chu Zhenqian possessed a spiritual root. To this, Chu Zhenqian herself was unclear. However, later on, Lu Changxing found a spirit-sensing stone in the old man's wrap. It was a spiritual object, capable of detecting whether someone possesses a spiritual root or not. If placed near a person with a spiritual root, the stone would faintly glow. This also clarified to Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu why the old man knew that Chu Zhenqian held a spiritual root. They guessed that the old man was likely working for some parasitic cultivator. In the secular world, there are cultivators who, due to aptitude, age, injuries, and other such reasons, lose hope in cultivation and abandon it. They turn to pursuing a life of enjoyment, seeking wealth, prosperity, and secular power. Such cultivators are referred to as parasitic cultivators. Among the parasitic cultivators, the most common practice is to use their power to have others find females with spiritual roots for them, in order to continue their lineage. After all, once hopeless in their own cultivation, naturally, they pin their cultivation dreams on their offspring. And so it was. On the second day, Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu's journey back included Chu Zhenjin. Chu Zhenjin rode along with Lu Changxing on a single mount. She sat in front of the spiritual steed, hugging the 9 Netherhound while Lu Changxing wrapped his arms around her, holding the reins. Chu Zhenjin's face was somewhat flushed, but not excessively shy. After all, Lu Changxing was to be her future husband, and such an intimate act was only to be expected. Considering that Chu Zhenjin was to be offered to a certain cultivator by the old man, Lu Changxing, wary of trouble, sped up his journey with Li Feiyu, remaining vigilant throughout. Nevertheless, it turned out to be a false alarm, and they encountered no dangers on their way. 7 days later, the 3 of them and their beasts safely returned to Jianghu Mountain. Chapter 36, Marrying Chu Zhenjin. _1 The Lu family of Jianghu, as a cultivation family, naturally could not casually bring outsiders in. At least, Lu Changxing did not yet have this privilege. However, the guards recognized Lu Changxing and did not give him too much trouble. Seeing that Chu Zhenjin had no cultivation level and was just an ordinary person, they inspected her briefly and then let her pass. They only asked Lu Changxing to report to Uncle Fu. "Thank you." Lu Changxing nodded and expressed his gratitude, then took Chu Zhenjin and Li Feiyu to Jianghu Villa, to return the spirit steed and to report to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu found it strange and somewhat speechless to see that Lu Changxing had returned from an outing with a young girl in tow. He thought to himself that Lu Changxing had recently renegotiated his contract, inquiring about whether he could marry or take concubines, so this was what he was waiting for, huh? If he could not take a concubine from the Lu family, then he intended to bring one in from outside, is that it? But it was just one woman, after all, so Uncle Fu said nothing, nor was it appropriate to say anything. After all, in addition to his interest in women, Lu Changxing was doing very well in all aspects of talisman making, and the Lu family was quite satisfied with him. However, when Uncle Fu discovered that Chu Zhenjin possessed a spiritual root, he grew more serious. He told Lu Changxing that he could bring people in the future, but he should not casually bring in cultivators or people with a spiritual root into Jianghu Mountain. Because the spiritual energy of a spirit vein is limited. One more person cultivating would mean an additional consumption of spiritual energy. The spirit vein of Jianghu Mountain could handle a few more people, no problem. But this is a rule of the Lu family. If everyone could casually bring people in, with everyone bringing their friends and family to Jianghu Mountain, wouldn't it be overpopulated? Especially since Lu Changxing lived in Jianghu Valley, it was even more important not to bring in people carelessly. Therefore, Uncle Fu told Lu Changxing he could bring at most 2 people. If he wanted to bring others in the future, he would need to pay with spirit stones. As for the 9 Netherhound, Uncle Fu didn't say anything. It's quite normal for a cultivator to have a demon beast as a spiritual pet, and the Lu family had no rules restricting this. There are many types of demon beasts, and the 9 Netherhound, still a cub, looked much like a little wolf dog and wasn't very noticeable. So Uncle Fu didn't pay it any mind but just cautioned Lu Changxing to be careful on his own. With so many children at home, it would be bad if the pet beast injured any of them. Lu Changxing naturally nodded and agreed to these words. After thanking Uncle Fu, he carried the 9 Netherhound and took Chu Zhenjin back to his living quarters. When Lu Changxing brought Chu Zhenjin home, naturally, none of his wives and concubines had any objections. Although the Lu family was a cultivation family, all of Lu Changxing's wives and concubines were raised in the secular world and had some feudal thoughts. Especially since Lu Changxing had revealed his talent for talisman making and his status in the Lu family had risen upon moving to Jianghu Valley, relations with his wives and concubines in the backyard were more harmonious than ever. The saying, "the husband is the wife's guide," was not at all exaggerated. After Lu Changxing briefly explained Chu Zhenjin's tragic background to his wives and concubines, they all showed great care for this new sister. This made it easy for Chu Zhenjin to integrate into this new family. However, due to her great ordeal and now being in an unfamiliar environment, Chu Zhenjin severely lacked a sense of security and clung to Lu Changxing the most. Typically, as soon as she saw Lu Changxing, she would stick by his side. Lu Changxing didn't mind this. He also spent a bit more time each day to bond and strengthen his relationship with Chu Zhenjin. After more than half a month of growing closer, Chu Zhenjin completely opened her heart to Lu Changxing. She shared everything about her family's situation with him. Her family hailed from a scholarly household in Zhoushan Mansion of Dongyang Prefecture, Qing Province. Except for her brother Chu Chang'e, who had gone to the capital for the imperial examination, everyone else had fallen victim to the hands of an old evildoer. When she previously said she had no family, it was because she knew that at that time, Lu Changxing could not have taken her to find her brother or anything like that. She also partly felt attached to Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu. After all, she was in a state of fear, panic, and despair. Meeting Lu Changxing and Li Feiyu, two heroes who saved a damsel in distress, was like a light appearing in the darkness, which she wanted to grasp tightly. Otherwise, as a weak girl, she would not have known what to do in the future. And after spending this time together, growing closer to Lu Changxing day by day, she was very grateful for her decision. Knowing that Lu Changxing was a man worthy of her lifelong trust, and having developed feelings of love for him, she held nothing back. Lastly, she also asked Lu Changxing to help her find her brother, Chu Chang'e, to inform him of the family matters and her current situation. She did not mention seeking revenge for their parents. Perhaps she knew that this would not be easy for Lu Changxing, so she did not bring it up. Lu Changxing naturally agreed to this minor request and said that he would have someone look for her brother. Meanwhile, seeing Chu Zhenjin open up her heart, Lu Changxing also proposed marriage. Faced with this proposal, Chu Zhenjin bashfully nodded in agreement. Subsequently, Lu Changxing had Uncle Fu help arrange a simple wedding ceremony at Jianghu Villa to marry Chu Zhenjin. After all, the young lady was all alone and had followed him to Jianghu Mountain, so Lu Changxing naturally wanted to give her a sense of security and a proper status. How did Lu Changxing get married again? He went out on a trip recently, so he brought a woman back with him. Damn, he already has 9 wives, how can he still marry? He's got more than a dozen children already, and he's still having more. Ridiculous, just freaking ridiculous. He doesn't even need to have 50 kids, why does he keep having more? You can tell, he really likes children. Doesn't he need to cultivate? Does his marrying wives and having children look like he's cultivating? I just used the spiritual eye technique and saw that this new bride has a spiritual root. Hiss, no wonder. Many Lu family disciples and immortal seedlings came to attend Lu Changsheng's wedding, and they were all amazed that he had taken another wife. After all, he already had 9 wives. For a cultivator of his age, this undoubtedly seemed like he was giving up on cultivation. The crowd of immortal seedlings didn't even know what to say about it. Lu Changxing, who didn't need to be forced to have children, was still actively getting married and producing offspring crazily. Yet they, who didn't want to marry and have children and only wanted to cultivate, had no choice but to do so. The wedding ceremony was very simple, with no pomp or ceremony, just going through the motions. Then he invited the Lu family disciples and immortal seedlings of Jianghu Villa for a meal, creating a bit of celebratory buzz. The wedding banquet cost Lu Changxing a total of 24 spirit stones. As for the gifts that others brought, Lu Changxing returned them all. It wasn't that he thought the money was too much. The Lu family disciples of Jianghu Villa and the many immortal seedlings were already poor and lived difficult lives. He was doing well financially at the moment, so there was no need to covet this small amount of money. Otherwise, people would talk behind his back about him organizing a wedding just to cash in on the gifts. Lu Changxing also gave his good brother Li Feiyu a red envelope. After all, Li Feiyu was the witness for him and Chu Zhenjin, so it was natural to show some courtesy. Additionally, he asked Li Feiyu to write back to the Crimson Whale gang to help search for Chu Zhenjin's brother, Chu Chang'e. After most of the banquet had been eaten, Lu Changxing went to the bridal chamber. Zhenjin. Lu Changxing saw Chu Zhenjin, wearing a phoenix crown and rosy clouds robe and covered with a red veil, sitting on the bed and called out to her. Chu Zhenjin did not reply verbally, but the small feet in red embroidered shoes that peeked out beneath her hem involuntarily retracted slightly. Seeing this, Lu Changxing chuckled and approached Chu Zhenjin, gently lifting the red veil. Her face, delicate as a jade sculpture and flushed with embarrassment, was revealed. Husband. Chu Zhenjin's face, pale and blushing, called out timidly. Even after spending so much time with Lu Changxing, developing a dependence and feelings for him, Chu Zhenjin still retained her shy demeanor. That was just her personality. Zhenjin, it's time to rest. Lu Changxing looked at Chu Zhenjin, who had her eyes cast down, a shy expression on her face, and hands unsure where to place, and sat down on the bed, wrapping his arms around her. Husband, the candles haven't been blown out. Chu Zhenjin's voice was soft and sticky as she spoke, but before she could finish, she let out a squeal. Chapter 37, Having 10 kids shouldn't be a problem, right? _1 The next morning dawned. A beam of sunlight, threading through the sparse bamboo leaves, spilled into the room and bathed the disheveled red bridal gown beside the bed. On the ground beside it, there was a pair of boots, embroidered shoes, a pink bellyband embroidered with lotus flowers, and pure white silk stockings. In the bed, Chu Zhenjin's delicate body was wrapped in the bedding, snuggling up to Lu Changxing like a little kitten, embracing his arm and sleeping in his hold. Her long legs were also entwined with Lu Changxing's, with a section of her smooth, jade-like calf peeking out of the blankets, revealing a delicate, elegantly shaped, and graspable little foot. Lu Changxing had just awoken and felt himself being tightly embraced, almost to the point of breathlessness. Opening his eyes, he saw Chu Zhenjin in his arms. Her hair was messy, the tear stains by her eyes still present. She had cried for a long time the previous night, entwining her whole body around his, as if afraid he would leave. Seeing the tear stains at the corner of her eyes and her reddened eyes, Lu Changxing felt a surge of tenderness in his heart, thinking to himself that Chu Zhenjin really was prone to crying, and easily so. He wanted to rise, but Chu Zhenjin was holding on too tightly, so he decided to just lay there and let her cling to him. She was soft-hearted and lacked a sense of security, very clingy to him, and since they had just consummated their marriage and he had nothing urgent to do, he simply chose to keep her company for a longer time. After an unknown duration, Chu Zhenjin's eyelashes quivered slightly, and she opened her sparkling eyes, crocally calling out, "Husband. You're awake." Lu Changxing said with a smile, tenderly stroking her delicate and soft cheek. Chu Zhenjin didn't speak, but gently rubbed her cheek against Lu Changxing's palm, snugly pressing her body against his chest. Lu Changxing just quietly held her, gently caressing her, and enjoying the quietness between them. Suddenly, Chu Zhenjin's little foot, which was exposed outside the blanket, restlessly twitched, her crystal-clear toes curling inward then stretching taut, ceaselessly moving. Blushing, she called out to Lu Changxing again, "Husband," then the two cuddled for a while longer before getting out of bed. After getting dressed, Chu Zhenjin suddenly asked, "Husband, could I be with child?" Having spent so much time with all the sisters and seeing so many children at home, Chu Zhenjin knew Lu Changxing was fond of children and that she too wanted to have them. With a blend of fear and longing in her heart, Chu Zhenjin looked forward to having a warm family once again. Would Zhenjin be willing to bear children for me? Lu Changxing asked, smiling and speaking softly. Chu Zhenjin's ears turned red, and she quietly hummed in agreement, then whispered, "I'm willing." Seeing this, Lu Changxing embraced her and kissed her slightly red and delicate ear, playfully saying, "Then, 10 children shouldn't be a problem, right?" Upon hearing this, Chu Zhenjin stiffened, her eyes widening with bewilderment. 10 children. How long would that take? Hee, just teasing you. It's time for breakfast, Lu Changxing chuckled. Although his words were playful, Lu Changxing couldn't deny that he did entertain such thoughts to some extent. After all, Chu Zhenjin possessed a spiritual root. Naturally, he hoped she would bear many children. But he would still respect Chu Zhenjin's wishes and not treat her merely as a breeding machine. In the following days, Lu Changxing spent each day with Chu Zhenjin. At the same time, he began to teach her cultivation. The cultivation technique they used was a war trophy previously obtained from Bullhead Mountain. A book titled The Changchun Technique, a primary level cultivation method. Compared to the returning origin technique, it had the added effect of preserving youth and health. Lu Changxing also wanted to use this method to observe Chu Zhenqian's spiritual root talent. Previously, Uncle Fu had only been able to discern that Chu Zhenqian had a spiritual root but could not determine its grade. After observing Chu Zhenqian's cultivation speed of drawing in spiritual power into her body, Lu Changxing preliminarily concluded she likely had an 8th grade spiritual root. Only slightly better than his own 9th grade spiritual root. But Lu Changxing was already very satisfied. As long as Chu Zhenqian had a spiritual root, their children would very likely possess spiritual roots as well. This was enough. 1 month later. After Lu Changxing's day and night efforts, Chu Zhenqian successfully became pregnant. Knowing that Chu Zhenqian was pregnant, Lu Changxing was very delighted. After all, she was his first wife with a spiritual root. Both of them had spiritual roots, so the probability of their child possessing a spiritual root was as high as 10 to 20%. 10 to 20% may not sound high, but compared to only one parent having a spiritual root, the probability had increased tenfold. Regarding the birth of this child, Lu Changxing couldn't help but feel more anticipation in his heart. At this time, Lu Changxing also remembered the Immortal Stature Spell Foundation Establishment spiritual materials he had purchased at Bullhead Mountain. He planned to go into seclusion and complete the Immortal Stature Spells Foundation establishment to cultivate automatically. This trip outside had also made Lu Changxing realize the advantages of being handsome. Not to mention anything else, just with the matter of Chu Zhenqian, Lu Changxing felt that if he had a dark complexion and looked ordinary, things would not have gone so smoothly. After all, only a handsome man could have a woman willingly give herself to him. If ugly, one could only be a beast of burden in the next life. Upon arriving at the practice room, Lu Changxing took out a fist-sized piece of red gold from his storage bag. A section of green wood as thick and long as a baby's arm. A bottle of clear and bright spiritual water. A red-hot stone. And a bag of yellowish-brown soil. These were precisely the 5 elements spiritual materials he had purchased at Bullhead Mountain for cultivating the Immortal Stature spell. He placed the 5 elements spiritual materials before him and sat down cross-legged. Qi! Lu Changxing exclaimed sharply, with his hands forming seals. The Immortal Stature spell started circulating, the spiritual power in his body surged, causing the 5 spiritual materials to slowly revolve around him, filled with spiritual light. Hum hum hum, strands of aura flew out from the spiritual materials and entered Lu Changxing's body. So, after 10 days, Lu Changxing had refined the 5 elements spiritual materials completely, opened his eyes, and completed the foundation establishment of the Immortal Stature spell. For a long time to come, the Immortal Stature spell would automatically cultivate and operate without the need for practice, refining his appearance and making him increasingly handsome. At the moment of completing the foundation establishment of the technique, Lu Changxing underwent a few mysterious changes. It was hard to pinpoint the specific details. But his facial features and physique, his temperament and demeanor, looked much more pleasant and natural to the eye. Lu Changxing didn't pay too much attention to these minor changes on himself, tidied his clothes briefly, walked out of the practice room, and went to the front courtyard to accompany his wives and children. At this time in the courtyard, his eldest son Lu Pingan was sleeping while hugging the little 9 netherhound, looking very harmonious. When the 9 netherhound was first brought back, his wives and concubines were somewhat worried, afraid it would harm the child. But after some time, they discovered that the 9 netherhound was very docile. Aside from eating, it would sleep almost all day, and they gradually stopped fearing it, tending to it every day on behalf of Lu Changxing. The children in the house liked the 9 netherhound, their playmate, very much, often bothering it so much that it had difficulty resting peacefully. 6 days later, Lu Changxing's 14th child was born. It was a boy without a spiritual root. Having so many children by now, Lu Changxing could feel that he was becoming increasingly indifferent towards his new offspring. If the child had no spiritual root and no system reward, watching the child being born didn't bring him much joy anymore. No wonder ancient emperors treated killing their sons as if it were nothing. Lu Changsheng looked at his 14th son with some emotion in his heart. He could clearly feel the changes in his mentality over the years. However, he considered these emotions only occasionally, and they were quickly driven from his mind. Chapter 38, The Second Spiritual Root Child. One time flew by, and before he knew it, half a year had passed. In this half year, Lu Changsheng's 15th and 16th children were born. All of them were without a spiritual root, which made Lu Changsheng's anticipation for the child in Chu Zhenshen's womb even greater. Meanwhile, through Lu Changsheng's efforts over the past 6 months, 5 more of his wives and concubines had become pregnant. Aside from Chu Zhenshen, who was still on her first pregnancy, the previous 3 wives and 6 concubines had all moved on to their second. The likes of Lu Zier and Lu Qing'er, the 2 sisters, had even started on their 3rd pregnancies. That day, Lu Changsheng had completed his daily meditation and cultivation in the practice room, then proceeded to the study to begin drawing talismans. These 2 activities had become part of his daily routine. Now at the 3rd level of qi refinement, middle-grade talismans posed no difficulty for Lu Changsheng. He could produce them successfully with ease. As for superior-grade talismans, because his mana and mental spirit were limited, and also due to the poor quality of the talisman brush, and the average quality of the talisman paper and spirit ink, there were still significant challenges. He could only attempt to draw some of the relatively simpler superior-grade talismans by brute force, accepting the possibility of failure. Therefore, only a small portion of the high-grade talisman paper and spirit ink that he had purchased at Bullhead Mountain had been transformed into talismans by him, kept ready for emergencies. For the remaining materials, he planned to wait until his cultivation level progressed further and then buy a better talisman brush to create more talismans. After all, even if he created talismans right now, he wouldn't be able to sell them, so it was sufficient for them to be used for his personal emergencies. After drawing 2 middle-grade talismans, Lu Changsheng put down the talisman brush, ready to relax with his wives and concubines. Just as he walked out of the study, a servant presented him with a letter. It was written by Hong Yi. The letter simply recounted some nostalgic matters, mentioning that he had been performing well recently and that his father, Marquis Rui, had entrusted him with more of the family's affairs. It also asked about Lu Changsheng's recent well-being. This wasn't the first time that Lu Changsheng had received a letter from Hong Yi. It was the 3rd letter since he had returned to Qingzhou Mountain, and Lu Changsheng naturally understood why Hong Yi did this. Now that I have spare talismans to sell, even if the Lu family finds out, they probably won't blame me, Lu Changsheng thought to himself. The reason he had previously refrained from selling talismans to Hong Yi was straightforward. He was concerned that his private dealings with Hong Yi might come to the Lu family's attention. If the Lu family found out that he had a great number of talismans to sell, that wouldn't end well. But after so long, having been an elementary talisman master for over a year, and considering the proficiency he had shown regularly, having some spare talismans to sell seemed quite normal. Immediately, he replied in the letter that indeed, he had some talismans for sale and that they could be sold if Hong Yi needed them. He inquired about how they should conduct the transaction. Naturally, he couldn't leave Qingzhou Mountain just to sell a talisman, so he left it to Hong Yi to figure out a way. After writing the letter, Lu Changsheng handed it over to a servant and asked it to be sent to the post station for mailing. Within the Lu family, there was a post station for sending letters to the secular world, though it was considerably slow. For a letter like this to reach Hong Yi's hands would probably take a month or even longer. If there was truly an urgent matter, they would need to use talisman meant for transmitting messages. After that, Lu Changsheng went to the back courtyard to spend time with his wives, concubines, and children. This too had become part of his daily routine. Seeing the big belly of Chu Zhenshen, Lu Changsheng was reminded of her brother's situation. He made another trip to Qingzhou Villa, asking Li Feiyu if there had been any word from the Crimson Whale gang about Chu Zhenshen's brother, Chu Chang'e. However, Li Feiyu said that there had still been no information about Chu Chang'e from the Crimson Whale gang. Having had no news of Chu Zhenqian's brother Chu Chang'e for over half a year made Lu Changxing even consider the possibility that his inexpensive brother-in-law might have encountered some sort of accident. After all, based on what Chu Zhenqian had said, her brother was just an ordinary scholar. The journey to the capital to take the imperial exams was a tremendous one, spanning thousands of miles. If he encountered any danger on the way, it wasn't impossible that he might have met his demise. Lu Changxing planned in his heart that if there was still no news after some time, he would also ask Hong Yi to help investigate. After all, the Crimson Whale Gang was just a martial faction. Once they left Heavenly Water Mansion, their power was limited. Meanwhile, at the boundary between Qing Province and Jizhou in Jianghu country, atop a precipitous mountain range with bizarre rocks and steep cliffs, heavy mists enshrouded the area, obscuring visibility across the expanse and making the valley between the cliffs, deep and seemingly bottomless under the cover of the mists, unnerving for anyone who dared peek over the edge. Right now, in the vast and bottomless valley, woo, the gray mist spread, and chilling winds howled, almost like the wailing of ghosts and wolves. Visible at the valley's center lay a blood-red lake, roughly 10 paces wide. Around the lake, piles of white bones accumulate, causing one's hair to stand on end, and the blood-colored lake is even more so. The blood water is deep and dark, filled with an indescribable evil and demonic nature, constantly bubbling with blood. With every bubble that bursts, a faint and eerie howl accompanies it. In this blood lake, there is also a cocoon as thin as a cicada's wing, emitting a crystal-like blood light. The cocoon undulates up and down in the blood lake, as if breathing, its blood light fluctuating bright and dim, soul-stirring, and quite bizarre. If one looks closely, they can faintly make out that a man is enveloped inside the blood cocoon. At this moment, the man seems about to open his eyes, but in the next instant, a blood-colored lotus like a half-moon emerges on his forehead, causing his almost opened eyes to tightly close again, falling into a deep slumber. 3 months later. 3rd level energy refinement peak. But to break through to the 4th level energy refinement, who knows how long it will take. In the practice room, Lu Changxing, sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes and let out a breath of stale air, murmuring to himself. It took him about a year to reach each of the previous 3rd levels. But now, having cultivated to the peak of the 3rd level, he could clearly feel that the progression from the 3rd level to the 4th level energy refinement was different from before. There was a bottleneck. He couldn't break through without any obstruction, and it required a long period of grinding efforts. Lu Changxing didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, with his mediocre aptitude, being able to cultivate to the peak of the 3rd level energy refinement so quickly was already quite good. He was very clear about his own position. Late bloomer. When there are more children, grown up, things will get better. Jinjin must be close to giving birth. Lu Changxing got up, patted his dust-free robe, and walked out of the practice room. 11 days later. Chu Jinjin gave birth. The moment the child was born, Lu Changxing, who was outside the delivery room, immediately felt a profound sensation. It was the stirring of the spiritual root. He knew that his child possessed a spiritual root. This excited Lu Changxing immensely. He felt that his anticipation for the past 6 months had not been in vain. Indeed, one must have children with a woman who possesses a spiritual root. Otherwise, with just my side having a spiritual root, the chances of the child having one are too low. The fact that little Seven had one was purely a stroke of luck. Lu Changxing took a deep breath, very happy and excited. This caused several of his wives who were nearby to feel a twinge of jealousy upon seeing Lu Changxing's demeanor. Even though they were gentle and graceful in nature, they still felt that Lu Changxing was somewhat partial to Chu Jinjin. Not only did he show more concern for Chu Jinjin on a daily basis, but now that the child was born, he seemed much happier than when the previous children were born. However, they also knew the reason. Chu Jinjin possessed a spiritual root, could engage in cultivation, and the child she bore would likely also possess a spiritual root. This naturally made Lu Changxing more partial to her. When little Seven was born, the system gave me some child money. If I have 10 children with spiritual roots, the system should also give me some child money, right? Lu Changxing, who didn't notice the expressions of his wives, was immersed in the joy of his child's birth. Previously, when little 7, Lu Xianji, was born, because it was the first time a child with a spiritual root was born, a reward was given, which led him to speculate that, similar to the number of children, upon reaching a certain number, a reward would be given. After a short while, the midwife came out of the delivery room carrying the child. It was a boy. Lu Changxing held the child and entered the delivery room to visit Chu Zhenjin. Chu Zhenjin, though engaged in cultivation, had become pregnant soon after starting to practice. So she had yet to complete the process of leading qi into the body and was still very weak. Moreover, the first few levels of qi refinement didn't do much to enhance physical prowess. Seeing the frail Chu Zhenjin, Lu Changxing coaxed her to sleep, then handed the child over to a wet nurse, and went to the practice room to start cultivating. He had no choice, as he was unable to see the child's spiritual root or the specific changes in his own spiritual root. He could only judge the improvement of his own spiritual root through cultivation, a simple and unpretentious method, before estimating the grade of the child's spiritual root. Chapter 39. The fifth lottery draw _1. Several hours later, Lu Changxing opened his eyes and exhaled deeply. It's a bit better than Zioki's spiritual root. Through just now's cultivation, he could sense that his cultivation speed had increased by more than 10% compared to before. This meant that this child's spiritual root was better than that of his first child with a spiritual root, Lu Xianxi's. But it wasn't much better. Lu Changxing estimated it was still a lower grade spiritual root, either 8th grade or 7th grade. Because of his previous child, Lu Xianxi's spiritual root, Lu Changxing already had a general expectation in his heart. The highest would be an 8th grade spiritual root. There was a very good chance that, like him, the father, it was a 9th grade spiritual root. It's already enough. With this 10% improvement, plus Zioki's spiritual root boost, my current cultivation speed is nearly reaching that of an 8th grade spiritual roots. As long as I have many children, even if they all have lower grade spiritual roots, the sheer number can lead to a qualitative change. Who knows, my future cultivation speed might even surpass that of the legendary heavenly spiritual root. Lu Changxing muttered to himself, feeling quite delighted. He didn't mind too much that this child only had a lower grade spiritual root. For him at this point, it was already very good and quite nice that his children had spiritual roots at all. He had no requirements for their grade. Moreover, once these two children grew up and their spiritual roots fully developed, they would bring him no small improvement. The most important thing was that once the children grew up, they could cultivate and their strength could add to their father. Furthermore, children with spiritual roots could eventually marry and have children, also with a chance of having offspring with spiritual roots. This would carry on from generation to generation, representing hope and the future. Thinking of a future with many children who have spiritual roots, all of them successfully cultivating and branching out, Lu Changxing felt cozy at heart, seeing a wonderful future ahead. 3 days later, Lu Changxing received another letter. It was from Hong Yi. He expressed that as long as Lu Changxing had a certain number of talismans, he could send a trusted envoy with spirit stones to trade at Qingzhou Mountain, showing true sincerity. After reading the letter, Lu Changxing pondered for a moment. He wrote back saying that if Hong Yi could come over in 3 to 4 months, he could produce about 100 talismans by then. After all, with so much time passed, selling 100 talismans was not excessive. Aside from wanting to sell some talismans to make money, Lu Changxing also thought of using the benefits of the talisman trade to solidify the connection with Hong Yi. Previously, Hong Yi had mentioned in his letter that he was in charge of certain affairs within the Rui Marquis mansion. That involved dealing with cultivators, gathering news from the cultivation world. Also, he sought people with spiritual roots in the secular world through martial artists and folks from the rivers and lakes, as well as cultivational resources and treasures that had been lost to the secular world. So, Lu Changxing felt that he might need Hong Yi's help in the future. At the very least, he could use Hong Yi to make purchases of cultivational materials and resources, sparing him from going out. And moreover, with the growing number of his children, Lu Changxing also realized a problem. The speed at which he was having children seemed a bit too fast. Originally, he thought of sending his children into the secular world when they were over 10 years old. But Lu Changxing discovered, given the rate at which he was having children, by the time Lu Pingan, the eldest batch, were over 10 years old, he would likely have a total of 70 to 80, nearly 100 children. Having many children was naturally not a problem. With his current conditions, he could support even more. The issue was that nothing like his situation had ever occurred in Jianghu Valley. Some time ago, the steward Lu Bo came to have a talk with him, subtly suggesting that while it was natural to have children, Lu Changxing should pace himself a bit. Previously, Lu Yuanding said children should be sent away at 6 years of age, but staying an additional 3 to 5 years, being a bit older, wasn't a problem. However, with so many children, he suspected that the Lu family would most likely not agree to let the children stay in Jianghu Valley until they were over 10 years old. Hence, Lu Changxing also thought of solidifying his connection with Hong Yi. In the future, when sending the children to the secular world, besides relying on the Crimson Whale gang route of Li Feiyu, he could also ask for Hong Yi's help and care. After all, compared to the Crimson Whale gang, Hong Yi's connection with the Rui Marquis mansion was clearly more secure. As for sending children to the Lu family's secular branches, Lu Changxing was rather reluctant. He worried that his children would be brainwashed while growing up in the Lu family, indoctrinated with a host of family-related ideologies. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months passed. Lu Changsheng's 18th and 19th children were born. As expected, neither of the children had a spiritual root. After these 2 children were born, Lu Changxing felt a great sense of anticipation for the next child who would be born in about a month. Because that would be his 20th child. Based on his guesses about the system's achievement rewards, the number 20 might trigger an achievement reward from the system. Enjoying the crisp autumn weather outside, Lu Changxing took a child in each hand and went for a stroll in the backyard with the 2 infants in swaddles. In the yard, his eldest son Lu Pingan, who was nominally 4 but actually only 3, was playing and running after the 9 netherhound with a few little ones. The 9 netherhound that had been raised for over a year had grown quite a bit. It was over a foot tall, with fur as black as ink, smooth and shiny like satin, with fearsome fangs emerging from its mouth and a scarlet vertical mark between its eyes that captivated the soul. Lu Changxing estimated that even ordinary warriors would not be a match for the 9 netherhound now. A demon beast with a heavenly grade bloodline was not to be taken lightly. However, faced with human toddlers disdained by others, the 9 netherhound, even with a trace of its true spirit bloodline, could only keep fleeing in chaos under their pursuit. When he saw a human toddler fall, he had to hurry back to help them up. It was enduring pressures that should not exist at its age. Compared to Lu Pingan, the second-born, Lu Wuyu, and his sister Lu Wuyo were much quieter, watching their brother and other siblings run around from the side. Lu Changxing, looking at the children playing in the yard, his wives holding infants, his pregnant wives, his lips curled up in a faint smile. Wasn't this the kind of life he was after? To cultivate, to spend time with his wives and children, a simple life of leisure, peace, and happiness? However, Lu Changxing was acutely aware that in this world, in these times, this kind of peaceful, happy, and beautiful life was as fragile as a bubble, ready to burst at a touch. Strength was needed to protect this tranquility and beauty. So, I must strive to protect this peaceful and beautiful life, to make our future ever better. Lu Changxing whispered to himself. In the blink of an eye, another month went by. The 20th child that Lu Changxing had been eagerly awaiting was finally born. When this child was born, there was still no movement of the spiritual root. But the system notification he had been anticipating chimed in his mind. Congratulations to the host for having 20 children, you have gained 1 lottery draw chance. It really didn't let me down with the wait. Lu Changxing was delighted upon hearing this system notification. After settling down his child, Lu Changxing went to his study to start his 5th lottery draw. System, I want to draw. Lu Changxing silently intoned. Immediately, the familiar lottery will materialize before his eyes. I wonder if I can draw a cultivation method this time. Lu Changxing looked at the lottery wheel, hoping in his heart. At this stage, what he wanted most was a good cultivation method. After all, great buildings rise from the ground. One's foundation must be solidly laid. If there were a good cultivation method, he could advance to a higher level both in terms of his foundation and his cultivation speed. It would certainly be better than this trashy returning origin technique. Lu Changxing was very worried that once his cultivation realm grew higher, he would suffer from an unstable, unsolid foundation because his initial technique was so lousy, hindering his progress compared to others with more robust foundations. Without indulging in wild and fanciful thoughts, Lu Changxing took a deep breath and declared, "Start the lottery draw." Instantly, the pale red wheel shimmered with golden light and began spinning rapidly. A moment later, the golden glow slowed down, and under Lu Changxing's expectant gaze, it stopped on the space for a cultivation technique. Chapter 40, 100 Refinements Treasure Body Art. _1, ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 100 Refinements Treasure Body Art. The reward has been issued to the system space, and the host can check it at any time. A transparent jade scroll pattern emerged, accompanying the system notification sound. 100 Refinements Treasure Body Art? Is this a body refining technique? Just as a look of joy started to appear on Lu Changxing's face, his expression stiffened. He did want to cultivate a technique. But what he wanted was a chi refinement technique, not a body refinement technique. Among cultivators, there is also the concept of body cultivation, known as body cultivators. Compared to law cultivators, body cultivators can significantly make up for the weaknesses in survival ability and close combat in the early stages. But compared to law cultivation, body cultivation consumes more time, effort, and resources. Most cultivators simply didn't have the time, energy, or financial resources to cultivate both a body refining technique and law cultivation, to pursue magical dual cultivation. After all, for most cultivators, cultivation level, magical treasures, and divine skills are the main focus. Physical bodies and such, as long as they're passable, that's enough. Who would bother with close combat as a dignified cultivator? Body cultivation only has the advantage in the early stages of cultivation. Sigh, the first technique I drew was a supplementary technique, and now another body refining technique. Is it so difficult to get a chi refinement technique? Lu Changxing shook his head and heaved a sigh. However, if it's a body refining technique, then so be it. Having more skills won't hold one down. Besides, the body is the capital of the revolution. While other cultivators don't really focus on body refining, the path they'll take in the future definitely requires proper cultivation of the physical body. Lu Changxing took a deep breath and said. He naturally wouldn't disdain a body refining technique. It was just that, relatively speaking, he wanted a chi refinement technique more at this stage. However, as a cultivator who will have multiple wives and concubines and wishes to expand his family in the future, he felt that he did indeed have a need for body refinement to improve the aspect of his physical body. Immediately after, Lu Changxing opened the system space to check the technique he had acquired. Technique, 100 Refinements Treasure Body Art, Grade, Orthodox Level, Description. An inheritance technique from 100 Creation Mountain that uses heaven and earth treasures to forge the flesh, meridians, and bones of the human body, making one's body as splendid as a magic artifact, indestructible and possessing different magic artifact divine skill powers. Hiss. It's actually an orthodox level technique. Lu Changxing was surprised when he saw the grade of the technique. Techniques are categorized as primary level, advanced level, exquisite level, peripheral sect level, orthodox level. Orthodox level is the highest class of techniques he currently knows of. He was already astounded when he acquired the Immortal Beauty technique, which was a peripheral sect level technique. He thought the system could only draw peripheral sect level techniques. But unexpectedly, this time it gave him an orthodox level technique. All I can say is, the system is amazing. Then, upon seeing the description of the 100 Refinements treasure body art, Lu Changxing couldn't help but take a sharp intake of breath. Using heaven and earth treasures to forge the flesh, meridians, and bones of the human body, making one's body as splendid as a magic artifact, and possessing magic artifact divine skills. Just by reading this explanation, one would know how extraordinary this technique was, and how terrifying it would be once one reached a high level of cultivation. However, refining the body to be like a magic artifact wouldn't make it impossible to have children, right? Suddenly, a question popped into Lu Changsheng's mind. Since he rarely left Jianghu Mountain, he enjoyed reading when he had nothing to do. The books he read were very diverse, and he remembered seeing in one ancient book that many powerful-looking techniques all had side effects. For example, after cultivation, one might become infertile, or their personality and mental state might be affected by the technique, and so on. If there really were such side effects, he would never consider cultivating it. Without indulging in random thoughts, Lu Changsheng's mental spirit stirred slightly as he employed the 100 Refinements treasure body technique. Immediately, information about the 100 Refinements treasure body technique, including details on cultivation methods and various intricacies, flooded into Lu Changsheng's mind like an enlightening elixir. After a long while, Lu Changsheng opened his eyes and let out a long sigh of relief. This technique was incredibly profound. If it hadn't been for the system directly transmitting the technique into his mind for direct comprehension, even being an orthodox level technique, without guidance, it would have been difficult for him to even grasp the basics, let alone fully understand them. Even if he could comprehend it, cultivating it without guidance would have been very likely to cause problems. As for the side effects he had initially considered, having now thoroughly understood the 100 Refinements treasure body technique, he knew he had worried too much. Orthodox level cultivation techniques, as the mainstay of the profound sect, are grand and majestic. Aside from the high threshold and difficulty of cultivation, such techniques scarcely come with issues like side effects. However, the more powerful the technique, the more difficult it is to cultivate. Lu Changsheng couldn't help but sigh. The cultivation method of the 100 Refinements treasure body technique seemed quite straightforward. One uses heavenly and earthly treasures to refine the Buddha's flesh, meridians, and bones as if forging a magical treasure. This process could be done all at once to completely refine the body into a supreme magical treasure, or it could be done gradually, bit by bit. But to ultimately succeed meant refining the entire body into an indestructible form capable of rivaling heaven-penetrating spiritual treasures. With every movement of the hands and feet, divine skills would shake the heavens and the earth. But cultivating this technique was extremely difficult and resource-intensive. From the beginning of cultivation, one needs to use heavenly and earthly treasures to nourish the body. Once the body adapts, higher-tier treasures are required to temper and forge the physical body. Step by step, the body advances, capable of comparing to magic artifacts, spiritual artifacts, magical treasures, and heaven-penetrating spiritual treasures. Throughout this process, not only are resources consumed, but it is also fraught with danger, and one must refrain from being rash and impetuous. If too aggressive, even the slightest mistake could overwhelm the Buddha's ability to endure the refinement, leading to physical collapse and demise. After all, the very act of refining one's body into various magical treasures is inconceivable and defies the heavens, naturally making the process extremely perilous. However, having thoroughly comprehended the 100 Refinements treasure body technique, as long as I am not impatient and cultivate slowly, there should be no issues. Moreover, although this 100 Refinements treasure body technique is difficult to cultivate, there is a secret technique within it that allows for shortcuts and faster progression. It's about directly infusing magical treasures into the body and using them to nourish and build oneself. For an ordinary cultivator, it would be impossible to use magical treasures for body refinement, since even nascent soul immortals usually have only 1 or 2 magic artifacts at most. But I have the system, and in the system's lottery wheel, I can even draw orthodox level techniques, and I should also be able to draw magical treasures, maybe even spiritual treasures. If I can draw a magical treasure in the future, and use it to cultivate this 100 Refinements treasure body technique, I can quickly master it and make swift progress in body refinement. Lu Changxing pondered inwardly with a gleam in his eyes. Although the technique was difficult and the threshold high, to Lu Changxing, it still seemed excellent and very suitable for him. Without delay, Lu Changxing left the study and entered the practice room. He took out a black iron lump the size of a pot lid and attempted to cultivate the 100 Refinements treasure body technique with it. This iron lump was the shield magic artifact he had obtained from 3 robber cultivators at Bullhead Mountain. Under attack from the talisman treasure golden brick, the shield was damaged and deformed, all its prohibitions destroyed, and it could only be sold as scrap material. Yet, this scrap, capable of being used to forge a magic artifact, could still be considered heavenly and earthly treasure. Lu Changxing sat cross-legged, holding the shield, and began to operate the method of the 100 Refinements treasure body technique. As spiritual power circulated in his palms, they gradually turned a reddish hue, extracting the essence of the material from the shield magic artifact to nourish his flesh. The shield was refined using cold profound iron, and as Lu Changxing drew its essence, he felt strands of chilled energy entering his body. After cultivating for an hour, Lu Changxing ceased his practice and exhaled deeply. Although I have attained the Qi refinement 3rd level, I have no foundation in body refinement. 1 hour of cultivation is about enough for now, and extending the time could damage my body. Moreover, the material of this shield is of the metal element and inclined towards cold. If I continue cultivating the 100 Refinements treasure body technique with only this type of material, it could cause hidden injuries, so it's best to buy 5 elemental spiritual materials for a balanced cultivation. Lu Changxing stood up and lightly stretched his limbs. During the cultivation of body refining techniques, it's quite easy to inflict wear on the physical body and sustain subtle, unnoticed injuries. Having thoroughly comprehended the path of the 100 Refinements treasure body technique, Lu Changxing naturally knew the most beneficial way to cultivate this technique without harming his body. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.